Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with a silent prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Go stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a quorum. Supervisor Gallus is excused. Supervisor Geinring and Supervisor Bertram are absent. Well, Supervisor Geinring is here.
You got to do the Pledge of Allegiance alone.
Okay, the notice of meeting, this is a meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors. Prior to this meeting, public notice was given by posting a copy of the agenda in the office of the county clerk and emailing the agenda to the West Bend Daily News, which is the official newspaper. In addition, the agenda was emailed to CNI newspapers, Express News, Key Western Statesman, the Milwaukee Journal, WIBD, NBC Radio, and WTKM Radio. The above action is in conformity with the state of Wisconsin's open meeting law. First order of business will be consent agenda. Let's entertain a motion to accept. Supervisor McEwen, Supervisor Hartwig second. Supervisor Krebs?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number C, appointments. I didn't see any appointments, so I'm trying to figure out if I'm missing something or if it's just supposed to be blank.
Is that just a placeholder?
The two sub-bullets are the names of the individuals being appointed.
When I
Is
click
there-
on it, I get nothing.
They're on the agenda. Okay. Supervisor Bossert?
So I had an issue with my Novus agenda, so I was looking through the website, and the appointments were there. And on Novus agenda, they're not on here. So I'm wondering if we got a little technical glitch there.
Did you refresh? Did you refresh your website? If you refresh, that should work.
Yeah, I just logged in through Novus agenda now, so that shouldn't be the issue. But if a couple of us are having the same issue, I wonder if the website has a better version than Novus. So,
I was just trying to figure out if it's a placeholder or not.
It is not a placeholder.
Supervisor Carr?
The appointments are on the Novus agenda itself, right on the face of the agenda. That's where they appear. They don't appear in the sidebar on the left.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Just by voice, right? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is accepted. We begin with personal appearances, letters, and other communications, the 4-H Key Awards presentation.
Good evening. Yes, okay. Hello, my name is Amy Mangan Fisher. I am here as a representative of Extension Washington County with our Area Extension Director, Cindy Sarkady, to recognize 5 impressive Washington County youth. Bridget Dean, Ellie McMeekin, and Libby Wilcom are here joining me today. These 3 ladies, in addition to Kayla Fikowski and Nina Wood, were chosen as our 2018 Wisconsin 4-H Key Award recipients, and I am proud to honor them this evening. The Wisconsin 4-H Key Award program recognizes a select group of 4-H participants who have demonstrated consistent growth in their 4-H involvement, developed and applied their leadership skills, and actively participated in the functions of their 4-H club and community. It is the highest award given in Washington County 4-H. Bridget, Kayla, Ellie, Libby, and Nina represent the spirit of 4-H, enthusiasm, dedication, willingness to work, learn, and share with others. Libby will now share her experience on Washington County 4-H.
I will never forget the impact 4-H has made on me. As someone who never excelled musically, artistically, or athletically, I turned to volunteering as my focus. Specifically, being a part of the 4-H program is what gave me the opportunity to engage in my community while furthering my leadership and gaining life skills. As an underclassman, I struggled because I never felt like I had a talent like all of my other peers. I desperately searched for something I was good at, somewhere I felt where I belonged. Little did I know 4-H would be that exact outlet for me. In 4-H, people are not labeled, marginalized, or judged. Regardless of identity, anyone is welcome to participate in the program, and that type of acceptance is something I've never experienced in school. Through 4-H, I found my passion in public speaking and leadership, but more importantly, I found confidence, happiness, and lifelong friends. My first major opportunity with 4-H was traveling as a delegate on the American Spirit Experience, a bus trip where we explored American history through Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, and Niagara Falls. There was a rigorous application process, cover letter, resume, adult recommendation, and interview, but thankfully 4-H held workshops to guide me through the process. The ability to complete formal applications are ones that have benefited me ever since. Each county could only send a few delegates, so I was traveling with youth from all over Wisconsin. The idea of traveling with strangers was terrifying, but I met some friends that years later I still maintain contact with. We did icebreakers and introductions on the bus, which quickly helped me become more sociable. The experience was a trip of a lifetime that brought out my passion for traveling, learning, and being a part of 4-H. From there, I knew I wanted to take advantage of every opportunity 4-H had to offer. So, with the encouragement of some fantastic adults, I ran for the County Leaders Association. This was an elected board of youth and adults that focused on the more behind-the-scenes aspects of running such a large program. During my 2-year term, I participated in budget reviews and financial audits that further sparked my interest in the business field. I knew I wanted more, though, so I ran for the Wisconsin 4-H Leadership Council, another elected youth-adult partnership council. This position continued to foster my love for business, as well as teach me the practical skills of creating agendas, facilitating teleconferences, and managing my time efficiently. The second year of my term, I was elected youth president, where I was able to take on an even higher level of leadership, supporting other youth in their responsibilities. Besides my time on the Wisconsin 4-H Leadership Council, I've also continued my love for traveling by representing Wisconsin 4-H on many national travel experiences. These experiences taught me about my responsibilities as a citizen, gave me the opportunity to meet congressmen, and introduced me to hundreds of other youth around the country. Now, I'm happy to say that 4-H's impact on me has stretched much further than within the program. I received every paid job of mine from 4-H Connections, and been encouraged to pursue a career in business, hopefully with a minor in nonprofit management. I know these are notions I share as my peer Bridget plans on pursuing communications as a result of her 4-H involvement. We know 4-H is what shaped us into the talented, confident, passionate young women we are today. Thank you.
No, I'll come down there. Okay. Come on in over here, Lisa. In front of everybody. I'm gonna show you the right one here, so. This one is Bridget. And Keila. Ellie. Libby. Actually, I'll just hold these. Come on in. So. Thank you, young ladies. You guys are the future. You guys may be sitting in places like this where you could be in charge of a county, you can work in our government. So I really appreciate all the stuff you do. I've always been an advocate of 4-H. You guys are creating the leaders to come. All right? Everybody can give a good round of applause. Okay, if Deputy Schmitz can come forward, please. Come on up. Okay.
Whereas the Washington County Sheriff's Deputy Jeff Schwitz has protected Washington County residents for over 30 years, whereas Deputy Schwitz serves in leadership roles as the SWAT team equipment handler, Pro Phoenix administrator, command post operator, court officer, field training officer, CPR instructor, and tracks administrator. Whereas on Friday, January 18th, 2019, Deputy Schwitz showed compassion, a core value of Washington County, by assisting a Washington County resident above and beyond the call of duty. Whereas on that evening, Deputy Schwitz observed an employee at a local restaurant distraught because she would not have a cake in time for a relative's birthday party the next day. Whereas after his shift, Deputy Schwitz purchased a birthday cake for the child's first birthday, whereas Deputy Schwitz's actions embody the Washington County Sheriff's Office motto of dedicated to serve, whereas Deputy Schwitz's response to his action has been, "It's what we do, we help people." Be it therefore resolved that Washington County thanks Deputy Jeff Schwitz for his above and beyond service to our residents, dated this 13th day of February 2019 and given at the February 2019 County Board of Supervisors meeting.
Having been a police officer for 30 years myself, and knowing how they're so criticized when they don't do anything right, do something wrong, it's an honor to see and recognize for doing something so wonderful. Jeff, you truly are one of Washington County's finest.
Thank you. It's my honor to serve Washington County in my career, and I love helping the public. My parents raised me. Somebody needs help, help them. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move up. H, 2018 Resolution 75. We have State Representative Mark Warren here, who is the author of the legislation that we're presenting a resolution for. So we'll give him the floor to speak to that legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Had the opportunity to work with the executive committee a couple of times and different county officials, but my first time here with the Washington County Board. So I appreciate the opportunity and the invitation from Josh and the chairman. And I wanted to, I guess, take advantage of the invitation because I was quite concerned with the resolution on the bill and some of the other supporting documents that Washington County has put out on this legislation. And a lot of the concern comes with kind of the tone of some of the documents and such, not so much with the, at least the title of the resolution or the idea of asking for a study of the bill. That's a reasonable position to ask for additional information. But still concerned with some of the other language in the resolution and some of those documents, and that was why I called the administrator, and I guess why I'm here tonight. And obviously, I understand, having served in local government and appeared before other county boards before, that you have a lot of things on your agenda, and all these other folks aren't here to listen to me. So I told the chairman I'd try to limit it to 2 hours. And obviously I'll try to keep it brief. There's a lot that we could talk about here. I want to just kind of overview some high-level stuff on the bill, and then I'd be happy to answer questions. I certainly understand, having served in local government, that it's important that you all have your information from your staff, and you certainly want to respect that. But I just want to offer some other alternatives and some thoughts on hopefully maybe even how someone who gets the honor of representing part of Washington County, I would argue the best part of Washington County. And I just wanted to see if Tim was still listening, but he smiles, I knew he was still listening. And and someone who then gets to work with local government, because I believe that's important. Hopefully we can work together better as well in the future, because I think one of the biggest concerns is that I didn't hear about any of these concerns until the memos were coming. And I would have loved to have had a chance to talk about some of those concerns ahead of time. But on the bill itself, I think that having talked to a few of you, I know there's a variety of opinions, and sometimes good folks just have to agree to disagree. And that may be the way some of us end this. But I want to have a chance to express why this legislation comes forward, why it's been worked on for over 30 years by other legislators and for 3 years by myself. Because county jailers are treated differently when it comes to a retirement status in Wisconsin. And they're not even treated the same as a group. They're treated so differently that almost every county does it differently, or has done it differently over the years when it comes to the protective status. And this is a status that was created because we recognize that our public safety people, one of them who you just recognized, one of your deputies, you know, they have a dangerous job. There are things that the rest of us that mostly get to work in our offices and things don't face or don't experience. And so there were good reasons to create that system in the 1960s and to have all but some county jailers be part of that system has been a problem for a lot of folks over the years. Now, I think Washington County included your jailers in this maybe back in the 80s or 90s. Dodge County, where I live, same thing. Some counties still do it. There's 12 counties in Wisconsin where their jailers are still in part of their protective status. Prior to Act 10, there were more than 20 counties that were. So this bill tries to find a way to bring that group back together and have them all be treated part of that system because of the dangers of their job. But the challenge has always been who pays for it. So for the last 3 years, I worked with the Counties Association and the Battery Sheriff Association to bring this bill together so that you, as a county board, didn't have to pay for it. And the staff, the employee, would pay the difference. So they'd have the protection that they should have for their dangerous job, but it wasn't an unfunded mandate placed on the counties. And that is why we worked so hard with the Counties Association for that. Now, if you think that people shouldn't be able to retire younger than you and things like that, I mean, that's just, we'll have to agree to disagree. But if you respect what these positions do, then you work on legislation like this to find a way to make it work for everyone. And that's what we did. So, it's perfectly fine, like I said, to ask for a study. What concerns me is when two things primarily in the information. One, when there's things that I just believe are inaccurate. And I called and specifically addressed some of those with Josh in the original memo. Because that does a couple of things. It makes me think that you're not getting all the information you should have as a county board to make the best decisions. And then also, I want to know what Washington County thinks as a representative of Washington County. But when I get a memo that's filled with inaccuracies, it makes it hard for me to know what you actually think, or if you have all that information. Or even more so, in our line of work, we get a lot of memos. And if the memos continue to have inaccuracies in them, we're probably just going to stop reading them. And then we don't know what is really the opinion of Washington County. So I think that's one of the important things that we should work to improve, and I hope that we can do that, and I hope that the line of communication, better line of communication can do that. The other thing is when there's language in the resolution that's before you tonight that says things like, ensure it's the first now therefore be resolved, asking for the study, is calling for the study to ensure county taxpayers will be held harmless in perpetuity. Well, what kind of actuarial study, unless there's no money in the program, could ever say that never, ever, ever, in perpetuity, that there would never, I mean, you couldn't do a study like that. No study would ever say that there would never, ever, ever be a chance that, especially one that involves an insurance policy. I mean, it's certainly possible that there could be costs at some point. I mean, so that strong of language makes it sound like not only do you want us to do a study, but you're kind of setting it up to make sure it could never provide the information that would allow you to ever support the legislation. Again, with no discussion, just that kind of stark language. So that's troubling as someone who is trying to represent some of this area and then not really having any ability to work within that. So I would hope that some of those things could be considered. And also moving forward, have an opportunity. This isn't the first time either. I didn't find out about this right away, but you did a resolution late last year on the 17-year-old bill, as I'm also the author of, and I see your resolution says I'm the author and represent part of Washington County. But I didn't even know about that until you came recently with the Counties Association group to talk about that, and it was on your agenda, and I had my staff track down the resolution and find out what it said. And again, inconsistencies with the bill in it, and nothing that was ever, give me a call, let's meet. I like to come to West Bend once in a while, or better yet, we can meet in Hartford. I'm sure the mayor and the county board rep would be happy to host us to talk about these things. And so I would hope that in the future there could be more work beforehand. And I certainly don't have any problems at all with the county board offering their opinion. I just want to have good communication when we do that. So with that, I would be happy, if the chairman so wished, to entertain questions from anyone on the bill, or I guess whatever else.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you. So what inaccuracies are in this resolution that you saw, other than the
The biggest
perpetuity.
inaccuracy in the resolution before us tonight is something that was throughout your memos. It constantly refers to an opt-in or an opt-in or out approach. And the bill has this isn't an opt-in, it simply has, the bill would put all county jailers in Wisconsin into the retirement system and only allows them an opt-out simply for the reason we're making them pay. So if they don't want to pay the additional payment, they could be allowed just once at the time of hire to opt out of that. And we simply view that as the same action that we took in like right to work in the legislature. We shouldn't force you to be in an association. We shouldn't force you to be in something that you're paying if you don't want to be. So if you don't want the benefit, you don't have to pay. There's an opt-out. There is no opt-in. The words don't appear anywhere in it that such a thing doesn't happen. It puts people in, and they have the ability to opt out.
Why do you only let them opt out one time only?
That was something, as we negotiated, the sheriffs were very, very much wanted us to include the ability for them to opt in and out in life changes and things like you do with your health insurance. We did not do that for the concerns of the ETF, the department, for the same reasons that are cited in one of the memos here at the local level, because it's extra work to have to do that in and out stuff. So it's a one-time thing, so that it's not that the local folks here otherwise would have to be doing a in and out thing, different codes and such through those things, and then the department would have to track, because it's a different multiplier and a different contribution. So the years that you're in, you earn faster because of the different multiplier, and the years that you're not. So it would be a accounting challenge. So we did not do that.
I think that would be a poor choice just for the new hires, because if they're starting a 20 to 30 year career, you're expected when they're green to make a life-altering decision and have to live with it.
Yes.
So I would recommend that maybe not yearly they could opt out, but that you allow some flexibility for them so they do have a choice in that matter.
That was certainly the argument that the sheriffs made, and the conversation we had at that time was, it certainly will be on the sheriffs when they hire these folks, and on the HR departments to help explain, much as I remember when I was hired by Dodge County as a 22-year-old fresh out of college, Ms. Nails explaining all of the life insurance things and the 457 and all that stuff. It certainly will be something that is an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we get to gone into discussion, I'm going to entertain a motion to for that resolution 75. Motion by Supervisor Bullowa, second by Supervisor Mahalik. Okay, we'll continue. Supervisor Basil.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you. We got the Public Safety Committee got this resolution at the last minute, at their last public safety meeting, and it made sense at the time to talk to about having this resolution go through, see it actually study. I'm a proponent of this system is broke. Our legacy cost is broke, and I see that this is just gonna compound it more and more and more. The county board made a decision, as you well said, in 1991 to split off the sheriff's department with the jailers. There's some things I have never agreed with what the county board did before, but I agree with this. They were dealing with three different unions at the time. I think that's a great idea. We just raised the wages for our jailers to fill the vacancies and keep our employees. We'd have to do this, we'd have to, because they'd be losing more money again, we'd have to make them whole again on the money they lost. Have you studied whether or not this will raise the cost of deputy disability goes up, taxpayers pay more for actual law enforcement?
There has not been a, actuarial study on it. The statute, the way it's written on duty disability, you're in a user group, so if someone else has, and then of course duty disability is that you are injured or killed in the line of duty, so that you are either dead or unable to work, so it's not a minor thing at all. But if other counties have those occurrences, they don't affect your rate specifically because you're in whatever group you're in based on occurrence, like any type of insurance policy. So it doesn't make, someone else's problems don't necessarily make your rates go up, is the way the statute's set up for that. As far as the, employee wages and stuff, those of course are local issues, but to say that they're losing money, I would submit that they are investing in their future, much as others of us do in our 401ks and things like that, so I don't know that, that would be the way I would interpret having money out of your paycheck towards your retirement, but everyone can interpret it as they wish. Certainly some young people may interpret it that way because you're not focused on that, but.
Well, you made a comment in there about every county does the different as far as the jailers. Every county does everything different about everything from the nursing homes, the highway department, social workers, court employees. Why are we just targeting these employees? Why is this the focal issue versus anybody, any other department?
Because this is a state pension system, part of the state pension system that was created, I think, in 1967, or around there, to focus on public safety. And corrections officers in the county level are really the only part of that that's not part of this system. State corrections officers are, police officers, county sheriffs, probation and parole agents, state patrol, really everyone else within that system is. And this one, like I said, is kind of the hodgepodge. Some counties do, some counties don't, some counties did, they don't anymore. So we're trying to uniform that.
This is an issue that I have been brought with me since I've been on the board for 10 years. And I've listened to you on the radio from WTKM from time to time, and I like a lot of stuff you're doing, but to me, you're completely off base on this. We need to start, I asked Senator Grothman at the time when he's there, you got Act 10 passed. Now you need to do is take all new employees, not old employees, new employees, and make them work 5 more years longer to get to that magic number, that retirement number. I would be in favor of this bill if you said everybody that's in there stays status, but all new hires, they get this opportunity then. That would be fine with me. If you would pass that along with all new hires, I'd be in favor of that. But I just see legacy costs going up and up and up and up, and it's unsustainable. It's just unsustainable. I had made the motion. The motion was made at the public safety meeting to have this actuary study done. After digging into this, I'm gonna make a motion, and I don't know how I could do it with the attorney in the lines to have this, that we just outright oppose this bill? Yes.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, I have a question. I'm on the retirement system. So I just got the notice, we have in the state of Wisconsin about 210,000 people that are paying into the ETF. We have 174,000 that are receiving benefits at this time.
Could you repeat that again, Don?
200, about 210 that are paying into the system and about 174 that are receiving benefits right now. So how is this going to affect that? I mean, right now, we have a really healthy ETF. I mean, our WRS is great. It's totally funded. By putting these additional, it's going to be for us 60, and we have 72 counties. You said 12 right now are in it, so we have another 60 counties that are going to be going in there, and average, they're already in WRS, correct? They're not in, yeah, they're in the general. And they'll be in the protected, which is a different multiplier. So, how is this gonna affect that, adding all those additional people onto that, is that gonna affect the WRS fund negatively?
Using only historical data, we don't believe it will. But we don't, part of why I don't support the study that you're requesting and that a few others did last session, is because we've never done that. We've added 4 employee groups by the legislative action in the last 50 years, and one really large one by governor reinterpretation of statute when he had all the state corrections officers. And the agency says they never did it. There was no, because I asked them, I said, can I look at past studies? Has this ever been done? Can I see it? You know, when we added the state corrections officers, what was the actuarial study? They have no record of one ever being done for that. They do them for their projections and stuff, but that's just for the system overall. That was never done when someone was added. So this has never been done. Looking at historically when those groups were added, it appears to have had no effect on the system, at least immediately, because there were not adjustments that weren't identified as changes to the investment pool. So what the Secretary's office generally says is that, and they say this on their website too, I believe, most of the time when you get a fluctuation, either up or down, like right now, this last year, we actually went down a little bit in our contributions for WRS. It's about the investment pool. It's what the market's doing.
Right.
And so now that, right, in the last few months, it's been kind of crappy, it might go up again in the future, but that is, again, not related to bills that they can tie it to. It's related to how the real money goes up or down, which is the investment pool. So historically, we don't believe it will. Is it possible? Sure. We don't know. But also, the other thing I'd like to recommend, you mentioned this a little bit, but what I kind of heard about the legacy costs, this pension system is one of 2 that's fully funded in the country. And it has been that way for a long time. We're not subsidizing it with other state money or anything like that. And we certainly expect that adding maybe as much as 7 or 8% to the 23,000 or so that are part of that protected group, that's part of the 200 and some thousand that you mentioned. We don't think, since it didn't, when the state corrections officer added, we don't think using that historical data that it will have a big impact.
The one thing that would concern me is the reduction in the retirement age. I know Washington County have 20 out of our 60 that will be at retirement age immediately. I don't know how that goes on through the state, but you would add all those people to that fund. You're maybe only talking 500-600 people or something like that throughout the state, but that takes, that reduces who's paying in, because it's gonna take time to find replacements.
I think 2 things there, though. If they retire right away, they'll get paid less because they weren't paying the higher rate over the years. So their impact will be lower because it'll be a lower monthly payment for as long as they're retired. And also, for that reason, I think, and I said this on the phone when I talked to Josh, I mean, anything's possible. People will do what they think. I mean, maybe some of them have health reasons they should retire early and now they can, you know, but the likelihood that all 20 of them would suddenly do that and leave all that money on the table when they're only 5, 6, 7 years from the current retirement system they're in, and they're probably already looking at what that pension amount's gonna be then, and it would be considerably less since they weren't paying more in along the way. People are gonna have to make their decisions, but I think that'll also be one of the challenges that an actuarial study will have, is they'll just be able to tell you historically what they speculate will happen. But that won't be exactly what will happen in Washington County, because those individuals are gonna make their own decisions.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Supervisor Carr?
All right, I am curious about this. First of all, do I understand correctly that we have approximately 60 individuals who are potentially involved with this that are so-called jailers?
Yeah, I believe, what is the number exactly? Is it 62?
Margie, do you happen to know that? I thought it was 67, but is that right? Sure. Okay.
Well, let's just use a figure of 60. Do I understand correctly, and I'm a little confused about this, so maybe some other folks are too, that the individuals who are being considered would have the opportunity, regardless of where they are in their career, of so-called opting into this new pension scheme wherever they are in their career. In other words, if they've been there 20 years, they could opt in, or if they've been there 1 year, they could opt in. Is that correct?
They would not opt in, they would be placed in if the statute, if the bill became law.
Even if they've been in service for 20 years, they'd still automatically be
They would automatically be placed in and have the option to opt out of it if they did not wish to pay out of their pocket the difference.
okay, so if that's the case, then they do have an opt-out opportunity, and we've been just discussing that. So then the next question is, how can you do an actuarial analysis if you don't know how many of these people are going to stay in and not stay in? And in addition, all this resolution, as I understand it, is trying to do is to create an actuarial analysis so we would know where we stand after the analysis is done, so that then we can make a decision as to whether we want to support the bill or not, and support it on behalf of our local jailers. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think that's what the intent was for the most part. I just think that, as you said, I'm not sure what actuarial studies would be able to be done to tell you what you need. Because it would be pretty complicated to do some of those, especially with the dual insurance policy for duty disability and the retirement system and all the factors. But there are people that'll do it, and as long as you're willing to pay the money for the study, they'll give you percentages and analysis and stuff.
So in other words, the analysis is going to have a lot of assumptions built into it, and anytime you get an actuarial analysis with a lot of assumptions, it becomes less and less potentially valid going forward. So that's the problem, the way it looks to me. Now, maybe I'm missing something here, but that's just what it seems to me. So thank you. Those are the only questions I had.
Supervisor Mahalik, I think I turned you off before. So,
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, Representative Bourne, I wanted to thank you very much for coming here. You represent a very small knuckle of Washington County that I just happen to live in. So I've been very pleased with the representation that you've given us thus far. So again, thank you very much for coming here. We really appreciate it. We did have an extended conversation as regards to this. I'm more in the camp of agree to disagree when it comes to some of this. I think that with all due respect to Supervisor Bossel and Supervisor McCune, and I can certainly understand their passion, I don't know that I would vote to go completely against your bill. However, I'm very interested in the actuarial study. Having had Supervisor Carr dealt with many actuarial studies, I'm very familiar with how there are variables, and that's one of the things that are included. We do have a couple of variables here. As regards to what you had talked about as far as inaccuracies, I'm not going to get into that. I'll let our attorney, Brad Stern, and County Administrator Showman deal with that. I think that it's just a little bit of focus on lenses as regards to what are considered inaccuracies and how we're representing it. So I think that there may be more of that communication things rather than passing back and forth on inaccuracies. The concern, though, is when it was mentioned, whether it's 60 or 67, we're going to have 20, or have the potential of having up to 20 openings to deal with immediately. And that's a real cost and a real service hit when you realize how difficult it is to get quality individuals. And I would think that the taxpayers here are represented, and I'm sure they're here for other reasons, so we thank you very much for your patience in going through this. But this impacts you in taking what we're going to have as those individuals. You mentioned that it's going to have an impact, albeit a lower impact, if they choose to retire as soon as they're eligible, and we have 20 that are going to come on right on board if this is passed. A lower impact, but it's still an impact. And that's one of the things that I have a real concern about, which is why I think that the actuarial study makes an incredible amount of sense if we're looking at this dollar amount to protect the integrity of one of the only systems in the country that is fully funded. I'd like to keep it that way. And so with that, I personally would not go against your bill, out of the chute, but I am very interested in having the study, and I just wanted to be on record. And again, thank you very much for being here.
Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, I would share Supervisor Mahalik opinions. I'd also thank you for coming. I very firmly believe that we would need a study before moving forward with this, and I would absolutely support that. I actually tend to lean against the whole idea. I think we've done a good job of providing proper benefits for people who have very dangerous jobs. We've done a good job locally of doing that. I think we need to maintain that local control. And so I'm going to be supporting the amendment, and I'll support the resolution whether the amendment passes or not. But I understand the agreed to disagree as well. Thank you.
Supervisor Dice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You spoke about inaccuracies. The only one I've heard so far is the opt-in one. What are the others?
I don't know if I have the original memo with me. One of the things I had talked to the administrator about was I talked earlier about the insurance. The memo said that there was concern about adding county jailers to it, that there would be more claims for people that were either killed or hurt so badly in the line of duty.
Do you know if any jailers in the state of Wisconsin have ever died as a result of some incident in a jail?
I don't know.
I just never heard of any, and yet, having worked in the court system for 30 years, we hear every so often about how a judge or court staff or attorneys are actually shot and killed because of something going on in the courts. But I've never heard of a jailer getting hurt. That's why I asked the question. I'm sure they get hurt. I can see, but I don't think we've ever lost a jailer. And yet, court staff, they'll never be protected. So, anyway, so I interrupted you. I apologize.
So that was one of the things where it said in the memo that this could end up costing the state more, which the state would be in a different tier then because it's separate tiers based on your claims. So that's not the way the statute's set up. So a county jail having a claim would not affect others in that way. There were one or two others that maybe I can remember. I don't have that memo with me. But then also I mentioned the other resolution on 17-year-olds. And that was one where it cites that the concern of the county board, if you remember in December, was the funding level and that you would be reimbursed. And it cites that $5 million was in the bill to fund the bill. And actually there was $10 million in it to fund it annually. 5 was for the agency to begin with, the other 5 was kept in a reserve with statutory language that required the agency to request it if they so needed it in order to protect the counties. So it was actually double what your resolution stated, and the resolution called for a reimbursement mechanism to set up, which the bill did do just that, required the agency to set up a reimbursement mechanism for the counties. So in case it was another, I don't know where the cross-up was there, maybe they saw 5 in one spot and didn't see it in the other, but again, if anybody had reached out, the bill actually did exactly what you were asking it to do.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, since we have a motion and a second and amendment, Ashley, could you read that?
Yes, so line 43, we would remove an opt-out in approach, adding any bill for county jailers to receive protective status should not advance, period. And then we would remove until outside actuary analysis of WRS contribution rates and duty disability premiums are completed and ensure county taxpayers will be held harmless in perpetuity.
Okay, are there any more debate on the amendment? Well, okay, who's to the amendment?
Yeah, because there's another opt-in, which I want to question.
Okay,
On line 31, there's another, since you're taking opt-in out. On line 31, it refers to opt-in again. Is that a contradiction?
Really, you just need to change the words opt-in to become.
In both situations?
On line 31,
Okay.
okay,
Where would the word become go?
whereas should all jail staff become protective class.
I would say, so it's opt-in to removed.
Correct.
okay, is there anyone else to the amendment? Supervisor Kelling first.
So, I guess I'm having a little bit of a difficulty understanding this whole thing, so it's hard to really know how to vote on this amendment. Okay, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, comes to mind. What's broke and why are we fixing it? So that's it. I'm a plain-spoken man.
No, I think that's, what's broke would depend on who you ask. But one of the things I think is broke is how we have this one subset of our protective services, our public safety folks, however you choose to refer to it, that's not included in this. I would submit, or at least some section of it is not included. Other counties feel what's broke is a system where they have pressures, which obviously this county enjoys not having on this issue, but a lot of other county boards have pressures from their sheriff to provide this, because some counties do, and some counties have in the past, and they don't want to pay for it. They don't know how to pay for it in the age of tight budgets, levy limits, things like that. So they strongly support this bill because it requires the employee to pay for it. The sheriffs support it because it's something that they believe, I should say the Badger sheriffs, there could be isolated sheriffs, possibly yours, that doesn't. I know, I have not met your new sheriff, I don't know.
He's here.
Yeah, but Sheriff Schmidt supported it in the past when I spoke with him about it. And the Badger sheriffs, it's their #1 priority, their legislative priority for the last 2 sessions, because they believe this is something that, that these employees should have. And they also believe it will help them in hiring, and I know I hear you saying that you think you've been doing the things you need to do here, and that's super. This is something that the Sheriff's Association feels is something that they need to help them in filling these positions, especially when state corrections officers, which is a very similar position, have had this protection since the 90s. So what we're trying to fix, those are some of the things, depending on your perspective or what your role is in this system, I guess. Those are some of the arguments that have been made, some of the arguments that were made to the committee in the assembly last session when it passed unanimously through the state assembly.
I guess, so to boil it down a little bit, it sounds to me like there's just some people who have it, some people who don't, and that's not fair, and I don't care about fair. It really doesn't matter to me. And some counties do it and some don't. We do a lot of things other counties don't do. okay? And we do, I'd like to think we do them pretty darn well. If it's something that we need, that would be, you know, if you could give me any reason why our people are not being protected, not being covered properly, or something like that, I could go along with it. But I haven't heard anything other than the Sheriff's Association wants it, or other sheriffs want it, or other counties want it. I don't care what other counties want. What, you know, what do we need? Why do we need it here? And why do I have to pay for it, or, you know, possibly be on the hook for it under these tough budget times? It sounds to me like they want to get us into the pool to help them pay for their benefits. And I'm not interested in that.
And that's, I mean, I can see how things are going here, and that's fine. We'll know what Washington County's opinion is, and that's part of what we need to know. But I would say to your question of, you know, why do we need it, is I think, well, first of all, no one's asking you to pay for it in this, I don't believe. Is it possible that there could be some cost at some point to counties? Sure, anything's possible, especially with insurance policies. But when one of your primary concerns is that cost, and one of the things that I've seen from staff is the cost that could be brought if there are claims that would drive the insurance, well, then that's exactly one of the reasons why they should have it. If their jobs are so dangerous that you believe there's risk that your rates will go up because someone could get hurt or killed in your jail, then that's the point of duty disability. Those jobs, you can't get AFLAC if you work in a jail. You can't get duty disability from AFLAC. You're a high-risk job, they won't insure you. Well, I shouldn't say that. 10 years ago, they went when I looked into it. I don't know if that's still the case, so I don't want to say anything's wrong. But in the past, at least, that was the case. You were a high-risk job, they went, but in my job now, I can get duty disability from AFLAC. That's the reason that duty disability is part of this. And that's the reason that a lot of people think that people in these type of positions, those are the type of arguments that are made. It doesn't happen a lot. I would venture to guess that someone probably has been killed in a county jail, but I don't know. I can't tell it where it happened, but I wouldn't be surprised if that hasn't. I know people that have been stabbed in the neck with a pencil and left bleeding in a cell block in a county jail. Now, they didn't die, their fellow workers got to them in time and stuff, but, so, I mean, I know of those things personally. I know that person that happened to, and people came and testified at our public hearing with injuries like that. So, those are some of the arguments that are made, and if it's not something that is needed in Washington County, you know,
Well, I mean, I guess, you know, that's just it. Do we have disability insurance? Are we taking care of our people? You know, I mean, it would seem, I would think we do, you know.
We have short and long-term disability. It's a different thing than duty disability. Think of duty disability as long-term disability on steroids,
Okay,
essentially. As the representative mentioned, it's more of a permanent out of work or death benefit, not a short-term situation or even a long-term necessarily.
and but
So
we
it's a
have,
different, it's something totally different, that
Okay.
only, in Washington County, only deputies have that benefit.
okay. All right, well, at least that gives me a little bit clearer picture. I hope that clears it up for others as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Supervisor Merton, your amendment was a friendly amendment to, you accept it as a friendly? Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Okay, let's, we'll vote on the amendment then. You ready for that? Yeah, could you repeat it, please?
On line 31, we would be removing so it would be, should all jail staff, removing opt-in and adding become, and then removing to and become protective class. And then line 43, we would be removing an opt-out in approach, adding any bill. And then on line 44, we would be removing until outside actuary analysis of WRS contribution rates and duty disability premiums are completed and ensure county taxpayers will be held harmless in perpetuity.
Before you make this vote, I just want to say that the staff drafted the resolution we drafted for the specific purpose of having the discussion, not to kill the bill. Although I understand the representative's position, we had about a 30-minute phone call where we shared back and forth some of the concerns and on both sides. Our intent was to try and have an opportunity for negotiation. I knew the minute I read the bill that everything that a number of you have just said was going to come out of this board. So we had a long discussion about do we kill the bill or don't we kill the bill? And we didn't feel that we had the information to do that fairly. We also knew that Wisconsin Counties Association took the position of working towards the bill as it is today. As the representative indicated, they've been working on it for quite a long time. We brought, at the very, very early weeks of Sheriff Schulteis coming on board, we brought him in to ask his opinion. And really, when we ended the conversation, it was, let's try to put this position out there so that we can get more information. Because without an actuarial study, what we were hearing from Finance Department, which is where really this originated from, and Human Resources Department was, they had a laundry list of concerns, which if you read the fiscal memo in the resolution, the finance director spells those out, no offense, Margie, ad nauseum. So, no offense. Yeah, thoroughly. Ad nauseum. So I would encourage that we continue down the path of attempting to ask for the actuarial study and see where it goes. And I respect if, as was said earlier, I respect if the board says, no, we don't even want to consider it, because there's good reasons on both sides. So do what your conscience tells you to do, but I just wanted you to have that background information before you voted on this amendment.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment. Amendment passes. So. Amendment passed, so we don't vote on the.
As amended.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? We have some keyed in. Supervisor Bishop?
My question was just informational. One of the concerns that was in the resolution was that we'd have a lot of people that would retire really quick. Is there not a vestment period to be part of this before you receive your benefits? Like most jobs, when you have a pension plan, you have to be working so many years before you even qualify to receive benefits.
They are already in the state retirement system. The jailers are already in the general system. The protective is a subset of that, where they pay more so that they can earn their benefit sooner and retire sooner. So that was why I said when the concern was that they would all retire at once, they technically could because they've reached the age, but they would earn much less because they haven't been paying the additional amount. But they're already vested because they're already in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Schleif?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, thank you, Representative, for the information. As part of the actuarial study, and we're playing with assumptions and probabilities, but I know when I retired, the biggest factor was, do I have medical or not, or enough medical? So will that also be considered as part of any analysis?
It really wouldn't, and the reason is that's an issue already for basically anyone in protective status. The sheriff could probably speak to this more than I can, but just a handful of law enforcement officers I know who've retired in their early 50s, typically they go and work another job or have a backup plan. There may or may not be one sitting up here, but it's an individual. It's an individual circumstance, and I think it goes to the representative's point that it's going to be, there will be, if the bill passed, we will have 20 people about a third, eligible for retirement on January 1st of 2020. Is it likely that 20 will retire? No, it's not likely. However, they're eligible. We already have issues staffing the jail. If we have 20 people who are literally overnight eligible to retire, we're going to have a problem, and that's our concern. Furthermore, speaking to the point about general versus protective status, remember, assuming for a moment that these 20 folks have been paying in for 20 years, they've been paying at a rate at which that rate planned for them to retire at a certain age. Now they're all of a sudden eligible to fast forward and retire 5 years or more earlier. There's got to be an impact to the system. That's what the actuarial study looks at. And is it going to be filled with assumptions? Of course it's going to be filled with assumptions. Anybody who's in finance knows that your entire life is predicated on assumptions. We bring you assumptions all the time. And actuarial studies have been done in the past on legislation. Double dipping in 2013 had an actuarial study. Adding military service to WRS in 2008 had an actuarial study. So it can be done. It's difficult. None of those were protected. Yes, they're different. They're different from protective status, but it can be done. But how do you do an actual actuarial study on how many people are going to add military service to their retirement benefit? Well, first tell me how many freaking people who are in this system have military service. Freaking. So they're not easy analyses, but without any kind of analysis, we can't tell you what the impact's going to be on us, what the impact's going to be on the retirement system, and so on. So those are our concerns.
So that's
Some of our
correct.
concerns.
Without the finance, the numbers behind this whole thing, we can't really make a decision. So I agree. Thank you.
Supervisor Dice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note on line 20 that opt-in wording is again used. So do we need to revise that section as well?
Which would create an opt-out.
Since there really is no opt-in approach?
Right, that should say opt-out. Frankly, that when I wrote that, my brain worked inversely. In effect, you're opting in by not opting out. The problem with opt-out, it doesn't really matter. The problem with an option is our system has never had an option. One of the reasons that, as the representative said, we've got one of the best systems in the state is because you don't get a choice. Just like during Act 10, I know we talked about investing in the future, Supervisor Krebs's point. However, I don't know how many people in 2010, when Act 10 happened, looked at it as, I'm getting to invest in my own future for the first time ever. Not many. So I'm sure this is going to be the same. The opt-out approach introduces something that's never existed before. My concern as administrator, and I know this is totally deep in the weeds, once we open the door to opting, what's to say we don't create an opt-in and opt-out approach at some point in the future and further jeopardize the system? So those are all, I don't have an answer. It's something that is a concern, and that's all. Again, it's the reason why we asked for actuarial study to keep the dialogue going rather than a strict, let's get out of it. But we're on to a whole different conversation now.
But no, the opt-out point is one that's a good one, and that's why the ETF opposes the bill. They don't oppose it because they don't want them to have it.
True.
The department wants it to stay the status quo. They want you to pay for it. They don't like the deal I negotiated with the county. ETF wouldn't have testified against the bill, the testimony they did, if we would have just done the status quo, because then they just run it like everything else. It is new. The new things.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, of course, an advisory referendum, which means that what we're doing is taking the temperature, if you will, of this body and then passing that on to the state. So, you know, I just hear the say, kill the bill, kill the bill. We can't kill the bill, just so you're aware of what's happening here. But I wanted to thank Representative Bourne again for bringing this up so we could have an in-depth discussion, because in its form now that it's been revised, I cannot support it, because I was very interested in looking at the additional information to see if it did make sense. Realize that counties are an extension of state government. That's how the system works. So to have something that is codified into the retirement system that is equal among the counties actually plays to the fact that counties are an extension of state government. And if somebody would want to go from one county to another, it just makes it easier. And I think that that could have been something that can help those people who decide to do this work that a lot of us choose not to do. And that's appreciated. So I cannot support this as amended, and I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
I think also having the study, making a decision based upon assumptions, that I have assumptions about what could happen. I don't know until we have the study done. That's why we asked for a study. We assume these things, but you know what? That saying about assume. I would love to see the study, find out if our concerns are valid or they're just concerns that aren't. So I'm not going to support it as amended either. Supervisor Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You talk about this actuarial study. What would be the time frame and what would be the costs of this study?
That would be borne, my understanding, that would be borne by the state.
Yeah, it would be borne by the state, and we really have no idea, because we wouldn't, I mean, if you look at like the original memo request from Washington County, it was asking specifically for what the study on both the pension system and on what potential costs there would be for the duty disability. Well, since that is different in all counties and the state plan, I mean, if you technically were gonna do what was asked for in that memo, you'd be talking about 74 with the pension one. So, yeah, 74 different actuarial studies, so probably millions if we did 74 of this difficult. We wouldn't do that, obviously, I don't think that was what, but that's what they asked for in the first memo. To do some overall analysis, I don't know, because we haven't asked. Also, when we asked the agency for the actuarial studies that the administrators cited on double dipping and stuff, they told me that actuarial studies weren't done. Those were analysis by the state agency, by Dutch Council, who has funds to do that. So they're memos that is internal guesstimates, so to speak. So even that, we didn't pay for an actuarial study. So tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions, depending on how many studies we do and what we ask them to do in them. So I can't, till we would know what we're trying to capture and how many studies we have to do, and then hire a firm to do that, I don't know. Because even now, the actuarial studies they do are more about the system overall and fund integrity. So it's a team that they have in place for regular analysis. So it's a set fee, and this would be a completely different analysis that we'd have to bid for.
Mr. Chairman, if I may address Supervisor Dice. Supervisor Dice, you had referenced line 20 contains the language opt-in. And if you would like, you certainly could move to amend line 20 to remove the language that says create an opt-in approach and replace it with the word grant, which I think is more consistent with the language of the bill. If you'd like to do that, I was just working on that after you mentioned it, so. So we have that motion made for that amendment?
Okay, could we consider that as a friendly, or? Okay. Okay, second, Bossert. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Any discussion regarding the additional amendment? Seeing none, we'll
Say-
vote it.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. So I want to explain before you take the vote, the practical effect of this vote. Oh, I'm sorry, on the amendment. My apologies. Go ahead.
The cleanup amendment.
Go ahead.
Then you can go. I'll get you
Thank you.
next. Okay, so we'll vote on this electronically.
Got it.
You ready? Rock? Okay. All right, the amendment passes, so, all right, back to discussion. Supervisor Carr.
I would like to suggest, since we have a very full agenda this evening, we stop talking about studies, because the study's off the table at this point. We've voted to amend this thing. It's either we're going to support the bill or we're not going to support it. Actuarial study's off the table at this point, as I understand it, because of the amendment that we passed earlier.
Sort of. So there's the memo that's in your packet was co-signed by myself and the sheriff. Under our lobbying policy, the elected sheriff, any elected constitutional officer can request a position be taken. That right now is the position of the county. The resolution was intended to give you the opportunity to jump on. Now we're to a point where you're basically changing the county's position. If you vote no, there's no standing resolution at all, and therefore we default back to the memo, which is asking for an actuarial study. So kind of.
So,
Clear as mud? So if a yes vote on the resolution as amended is a kill the bill, to quote the supervisor. A no vote defaults back to the actuarial study
okay, all right. We
by
had-
virtue of the memo.
Supervisor Carr had called the question. Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Jenkins.
And I would ask you to be clear to us what you want, please.
Voice vote, call the question.
It's hard to take a position on what we don't, something nebulous.
Okay. If no, yeah. Okay, we've called the question. We have motion and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So now we are going to vote on, could you vote on the resolution as amended? Does anybody need an explanation or a reading of it before we go? Everybody understands what your vote means right now?
A yes vote means you're approving as amended, which means in essence you're advocating to kill the bill. A no vote essentially means you're deferring back to the memo, which is the actuarial study.
Yep. Okay, we'll vote electronically on this. Okay, the resolution passes as amended. Okay, we're gonna take a short 7-minute break, but before you guys leave, before everybody leaves, Amy Reesop, State Legislative Liaison for Senator Ron Johnson, is right in front there. She's here to answer any questions you may have for her. It's a good opportunity to, these are the people that actually do the work. So they're gonna put together the notes intelligently and give them to Senator Johnson direct. So if you have any questions of her, any issues that are near and dear to your heart, take some time. Yeah, okay, 7-minute break. Okay, we're back in session. Everybody please take their seats. Okay. Going to consider 2018 Resolution 68, amend 2018-2022 Capital Improvement Plan, CIP County Highway Projects, County Trunk W and County Trunk S of reconsideration. I'll consider a motion to reconsider. I'll make a motion. Motion by Berg and second by Schleif. Okay. Berg. Okay. Yeah, Supervisor Berg was on the prevailing side, so based on ordinance, he's able to bring that up for reconsideration. Okay, open for discussion. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to admit, when I opened my agenda, I was very disappointed to see this item back. I feel for the people in that community that have to face this again. And I know it said that it was done in a proper way, but I think there were some shenanigans involved to get here, and I don't appreciate that. I think that that type of activity gives this whole board a bad name, and that's why we have so many people that don't trust the board, because they think we're sneaking around behind their backs. The one advantage of bringing this bill back, or this resolution, excuse me, back, is that we put County Highway S realignment back on the table. I think that County Highway S realignment is important for a lot of safety reasons. It was a shame that it had to fail last time. The silver lining on this whole evening is that we can bring this back and get S taken care of. So I'm offering an amendment to the resolution that would eliminate County Highway S extension from this resolution. I did give, I don't know if you want me to go through the whole thing.
Supervisor Bishop, if I may, I apologize for the interruption, but at this point in time, the rules only allow us to debate the merits of the motion to reconsider. If the motion is voted on and passes, then certainly your amendment would be in order.
There's a motion on the floor to reconsider. Until that motion's voted on, nothing, there isn't an amendment because there's no resolution.
Correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Krebs, are you to the reconsideration?
Well, if that's the case, I'm looking for clarification. If we vote to reconsider it, and if it passes reconsideration, will we be debating and voting tonight on the resolution back on the floor then?
That's correct.
Okay.
Supervisor Basso.
As a member on this board for at least going on my 10 years, we've had an accusation now that we have done something illegal. There's something illegal been done. I'd like a point of clarification as to what the supervisor is talking about when she says there's certain shenanigans that are going on in this board. I never got contacted anybody. You've been making accusations. You better prove it. It's in public meeting now. You better prove exactly what you're saying, because I think that's just not called for.
Supervisor Gonerich.
Yes, I was wondering for this vote, is it 80%? What is it percentage-wise that it needs to pass by in order to reconsider?
The motion to reconsider, Supervisor Gonerich, is a simple majority. The underlying resolution itself would be, I think it was 2/3. So.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask Supervisor Berg to expand on his reasonings for wanting this reconsideration?
Is that a call of order to the attorney there? Is that allowable? It's his purview to do it. I mean, you have to do it.
I would defer to the chair as a point of order if he allows the question to be answered. I wouldn't be opposed to our board rules.
If Supervisor Berg wants to speak to it, he can, if he's not required to.
I'm fine with that.
You want to speak to it? Okay.
I found the last meeting quite confusing. I even expressed some concerns in the meeting, and I did not fully understand what this project was all about. And driving home that evening after we voted, I started to rethink all the information that was given in that meeting, and I felt that I may have not had the proper information to make the right vote. And the next morning, I reached out to Josh, and I told him that. And he told me there are things we can do. And what I have done since after that last meeting, before calling Josh and telling him that I would like the reconsideration, I invited Josh to my home. He came over and we sat down for about an hour and a half. I've asked him all sorts of questions. He clarified everything as to why they wanted the Highway W project, the advantages of it for the county, and all the high points that they found to be to advantage for this project. When I sat in the meeting last month, the only people I've really talked to were the people that had opposed it. I had never had a clear conversation with Josh as to the advantages to the Highway W extension. Then I also went out in my district, who I'm here to represent, and I've talked to the people in my district, and I found that the people in my district have no clue about what's going on. I got 2 responses from them. One was, I know nothing about it. The second one was, where is Highway W? So that falls into me to do 2 things. That falls on me to educate the people in my district and to make the best decision I can for them. And going back and replaying all the information, it's unfortunate that there's people against the extension of Highway W, and I understand there's a target area and it's going to impact them greatly. But in the big picture, for the city of Hartford and for Washington County and the people that travel those roads, whether coming from the town of Erin, Dodge County, city of Hartford, and using those paths to West Bend, what's been proposed, I now feel is better, safer, and a stepping stone for future projects or future bettering of the county.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, going with reconsidering, to bring this back for reconsideration, we're looking at spending a possible $2 million plus on a brand-new road. We recently approved a $10 million borrowing, which the taxpayers will be paying the interest on that borrowing to improve our roads. We have existing roads that need to be rehabilitated. There's a lot of improvements that need to be made for safety reasons, etc. Until we get the roads that we already have in order, I think it's inappropriate to spend our taxpayers' money. And yes, this didn't come directly from the Washington County coffers, it came from the state, but it's still taxpayers' money. It's inappropriate to spend taxpayers' money on a new road until we get our existing roads in order. If in the future they feel that there is a need for this road, they can bring it back in 20 years when we've got our other projects done. But in the meantime, we need to put the money on the roads that are already there. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on the reconsideration. Motion passes. We'll reconsider the resolution 68. Is there any discussion, further discussion? Supervisor Hartwig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to know, is the reason for this Highway W extension, is it because it's a safety factor, or why are we spending all this money? Because I have a slip right here. There's a lot more intersections that are in worse shape, more accidents. They never happen up in this area. So that's why I can't figure out why we're spending this kind of money when we should maybe be looking at some roads down in the village of Germantown, village of Richfield. A lot of these have 73, 33 accidents, 26. 175 and S had 7 in the last 5 years, and S and 83 had 4. That's why I'm wondering why is this extension that important?
Okay. Let me first, I'll answer your question in a sec. Can we have a motion for Resolution 68? Before we start the discussion, motion by Supervisor Kelling, second by Supervisor Samisek. Okay. Being in my former life, I did a lot of traffic safety studies. And if you've been up on Highway 83, where Highway 83 intersects with 175, that's not a high accident, but there's a high incident or there's a high chance or probability of extremely severe accidents there. That's an angle road coming in where you make a turn. Now you get conditions like we have today. Someone's going south on 175 and then turns to go south on 83 and loses control of their vehicle because they're going 5 miles an hour too fast. You could possibly have a head-on collision. So when you look at traffic studies, you look at the potential, and the potential for that intersection is severe. So what we're doing, what the plan is, and we're talking about safety and efficient flow of traffic. So we're taking that road, eliminating that problematic intersection, fixing the one on S where its sight line is terrible, replacing a new intersection for W where it's got great sight lines. It's still an intersection, so it still has a potential to have accidents, but since it's got better sight lines, it's less potential for accidents. We're going to improve W all the way up into West Bend, or through Allenton into West Bend, so that's all part of our program. One of the things we've done is we're fully funded. Even though we borrowed money, we're still fully funded. We're not increasing any of the tax levy to pay for any of our borrowing for the roads. So we're going on, we're taking the steps to fix the roads. Every road that we have in the county is on the plan, is being repaired as it's necessary. It's part of the plan. You can't just take all the roads and replace them all at once. They're 25-year roads. We've got that plan in place. It's fully funded. We're like the only county in the state that's doing it. You know, that we're responsible. We have our strategic priorities that we've gone through, and not everybody on the board has looked at the strategic priorities, has been part of it. But this falls within our strategic priorities. Yeah, it's gonna, I talked last time, it's gonna affect some people negatively, all right? They put I used to live on Highway 57. They made it 4-lane in front of my house. My house value went down, and, it's part of progress. What we need to do when we take this into consideration, we vote for this, we need to respectfully consider the people that are affected by it, but we need to more consider the county as a whole. And this makes a safer route and more efficient route for people that are going north from Hartford. S is terrible. S is, that's an accident waiting to happen. That's as bad as Highway 164 and Hubertus Road that's in the district that I represent. But this is all part of the plan. And we've gone through, Highway Commissioner Schmidt showed a bunch of other roads too that weren't high traffic roads and weren't like really important, but they were dangerous roads and they needed to be repaired. They needed to be straightened out and create that safer, more efficient route. So that's what we're trying to do. This is all part of the plan. We have to look at the big picture when we're looking at these things. And you can say that, okay, it's going to negatively affect somebody, but is that going to be for the greater good of the county? I think this whole project fits the greater good. So, you could vote against it because you're concerned about several people that are going to be affected, and I understand exactly what they're going through. I was not a happy camper when they took away my parking in the front, took away my driveway, and knocked down a 100-year-old beautiful maple tree in front of my house. But it saved lives down the road because Mill Road and Green Bay Avenue, which is Highway 57, that was a death trap. They fixed it. All right, I didn't like it, but when it came down to it, looking back at it, it was the right thing to do. And yeah, I took a hit on it, but you know what? That's the way life works. Everybody can't be happy for everything that we do, but we have to take into consideration the greater good.
here's something else I'd like to bring up. You know, if you do that W and bring it out on 175, how's that intersection going to work? I mean, that's going to cause more problems there. And the other thing is in Allington in 33, that's going to be an incident. I mean, I see it now. There's a lot of traffic there. They're coming out of the feed mill. They're coming out of that implement dealer. And I see cars backed up.
It's a safe intersection. It's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit through there. It's safe. It's not going to be, you're not looking at, 55 going to 45. That's a problem right there at that 83 intersection. So, and, right now, a lot of people, they take 83 north, cut across on K, and then they go down 144. That's not the safest road either. There's cars parked on the road. There's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of homes that are right on the roadway. That's not the route that you want to have people take. The W route is the safest, and it's going to be an intersection, but the sight lines are very, very good there. So when you come to that intersection, you can see. You're not somebody coming over the top of a hill that's going to be on you in a second. You can see down the road. There's well over a half-mile sight on both sides of that, so. I'm sorry, I'm probably taking away Scott's thunder.
I think the best thing to do is correct the intersection on S and 175 up there to bring it straight out. I think you'll correct, and it'll be a lot cheaper than, 2.1 million? It's going to be a lot more than that by the time you're done. We're going to probably, it's going to be 3 million or more.
So there's a few things to answer your question directly. I won't get into the politics of it, but first and foremost, this project was approved and recommended by the Public Works Committee in the previous legislative session. So when you ask why is it here, why are we even thinking about it, that's number one. We took the whole entirety of the project, the map that I showed you originally with all the jurisdictional transfers in this, asked if we should pursue it. They said, yes, we have, that it's back here. Secondly, County Highway, the reason for the timing of County Highway WS, you mentioned all the other intersections. You're on Public Works Committee, Supervisor. At next month's meeting, you're going to have an agenda item that talks about all of the different intersections, the ones that are county-controlled intersections. We have funded everything from now until 2050. So it's not a matter of if those intersections get fixed. It's a matter of when those intersections get fixed. Public Works Committee will have the ability to make a move, if they so choose, to move those projects up if we can make it work, or move them back however you see fit. So why particularly W and why now and why S? Timing is everything. In this particular case, County Highway W from 175 north all the way to 33 is already on the project. You on the Public Works Committee have approved that. Now is the logical time to extend it. If you're going to do it, you would do it now. Finally, to address your question of what about W, if you drive out there, and I know you personally have, I don't know if everyone else has, when you stop at W and 175, you can see an awfully long ways to the north, and you can see an awfully long ways to the south. When you make the same stop at S and 175, you cannot see very, very far to the south. That's why. It's when I mentioned a month ago why we would do this, you can check the box and it's up on your screen. The reason that the previous Public Works Committee directed us to do this, I believe, is number one, it's a safety, and you just mentioned it. Why wouldn't we do others? Timing hasn't been right. It just happens to be right for this one. This checks off your priority of safety. It also checks off mobility. If we wanted to get hyperbolic, we could say it also checks off some of your priorities with regard to economic growth and vitality. We didn't go that far. So there's plenty of reasons for you to do it, and they're right in line with your priorities. There are also reasons not to do it, and those were talked about last month, including some of the sensitivities of people who live in the area. So there's good reasons on both sides, but to suggest that there aren't good reasons for us to make the proposal, I think is unfortunate and for staff members who've spent a year on it, I think is inappropriate. So I would just ask that you respect having the issue at hand, because there's no doubt that going to one county state intersection rather than the three we currently have is an improvement. Now, again, if you want to vote against it for other reasons, and those have been brought up, there are good reasons to vote against it. But I think previous public works committees and staff brought it up with good intentions.
Thank you, Josh. I just want to add one last thing. I still think we should take care of the roads we have and repair them before we start looking at building new roads.
First of all, I think Chairman Krupel did an outstanding job, and thank you, Josh, as well. Just to tab in a couple of things, the higher crash numbers that you cited there, you will be seeing this hopefully in front of the board in March, if not in April. Our traffic intersection analysis, we actually look at all the intersections. And we do look at the county-controlled intersection. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that either, but it's where a county road hits another county road, or a county road hits another local road. That's the intersection that we control. Highway 175 and S is not a road that we control. We're looking at taking this money we got for the 83 and reinvesting it into this area to make improvements. Just doing the S alone, which I know was brought up last month, isn't quite enough in the area to do that. Because you can imagine now, if you have a truck that's going to have to cross that intersection, you still don't have a great sight distance looking south there with a tractor trailer, all right? You still don't solve the intersection of S and 83 or 175 and 83 by just improving Highway S intersection. That is a state-controlled intersection. Realistically, we should leave it to them. But looking at it regionally and globally wise going, if we can solve the intersection at 175, the one to the north, I don't know if this works now. 175 and 83, the big circle in the upper left, the S and 83, NS and 175 at the same time, and increase efficiency and affect mobility, that's a win-win-win situation all around. Right? Yes, we are impacting several residents, up to 4 parcels, 10 to 12 acres of land that we're looking at, anywhere from 6 to 12. Yes, it's an immediate impact on them, no doubt, but you're impacting lives going into the future. Generations, just like the roads I showed you last month, will be impacted to utilize this new roadway. This is a much safer location to have this intersection, as Chairman Krefall mentioned, at the current W175 location. The accidents you referenced earlier, Supervisor Hartwig, are all down on Highway Q, down in Bounty Falls, Germantown, by McDonald's and Fleet Farm. We have 73, 54, 30s on Q and Hillside. You look at where those are, that's one of our highly traveled roads. We have 20 to 30,000 cars there a day. A lot of those are fender benders. There's someone backing up and someone not paying attention, all right? These, as you look on the map here, the yellow indicates when they have they have an injury involved in the accident. The green is property damage. So you look at those circles going, well, how much of that circle is green for property damage only? How much is yellow? That's the crash severity, all right, or the crash rate we're looking at. So even though those have a high lot of crashes down there, 73 crashes at the intersection, with 30,000 cars going through there a day, it's not that much of a high crash rate, all right? But you look up here going, you only have a couple thousand cars going through there a day, you have 8 accidents, now that crash rate becomes more important. And I kind of mentioned that last month as well. So it's not just the amount of crashes, but it's the severity and the rate at which they happen. We're looking at trying to solve all those issues in that area at the same time. Like I said, reinvesting that money that we obtained from the state into the same area. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's what we're doing is, so yes, we are doing it for the safety purposes, but also the increased mobility between the two. And as for Allenton, we'll be looking at that area coming up this next year. Hope to have that public information meeting sometime early summer to look at any issues we have to address potentially in Allenton. We've already had some preliminary conversations with the town board in Allenton to discuss what that's going to look like down there. So we'll be able to address those issues, at the same time we're addressing these.
I have one more question. All this traffic going down W, I just think it's going to be a big mess down in Allington. I think there's going to be a 33 and W, it's just going to get congested, and it's going to back up. It's going to cause a lot of traffic problems, I think.
I just want to mention this because I think it's important. And I understand the concerns. As we mentioned before, last month, we don't anticipate major increases in traffic because we made a connection. The traffic in that area generally, if you look beyond W, and we didn't do a good job of creating a map where you can look anything bigger than 1,000 acres. But if you zoom out and you consider the entire town or multiple towns, you know that there just isn't enough traffic in the entire area to do anything even like double the traffic amount. So we're talking about approximately 2,000 vehicles a day. It's not going to go to 4,000. There's not enough traffic down there. So I'm not sure I share the same concern, number one. Secondly, I just want to point out to you, credibility is important to me. We talk about it all the time at department head meeting. I understand that everything that had to do with the reliever route was contentious. This is one piece of a much bigger deal, as you know, as I explained last month, that brought an end to that discussion. But all of this revolves around a very small area that you can see on this map. You have a county engineer who you've had for a long time, who I believe with most of you has a heck of a lot of credibility, a heck of a lot more than me. And Scott grew up in this area, okay? The lands that we're talking about were almost literally his backyard. So if there's anyone who knows this area, it's this man. You think we would come to you with a proposal from someone who lived in the area that was not well advised? That's the type of credibility that when we had the discussion, when we talked to the town of Addison about it, and I think up until recently, talked to the town of Hartford about this as holistically, as I mentioned last month, the response was, boy, I really wish we could find something we didn't like about it. Okay? If you talk to anybody who in the St. Lawrence area on the EMT squad about this area, County Highway K and 83, County Highway S and 175, they could tell you the history. The colors on that map are there for a reason. I mean, this type of project is exactly the type of project that we're here to do. If we can't get to a point of feeling comfortable with supporting this type of project and achieving this many priorities, what type of project do we have that we hit this many priorities and we can do? That's my bigger concern. That's how our whole system of county government is set up. You give us priorities, we bring solutions to you. We've got a public works committee of the past that told us to do it and endorsed it. Now we're here. I urge you to vote for it because we've tried hard with a great deal of credibility to bring a project that we think achieves your goals.
Josh, I have one more question. What's going to happen with the old part of 83 then? It would be eliminated. What are you going to do with that? It's going back into farmland, or what's happening with that?
It's as is indicated in the resolution. There are a variety of options that we would be pursuing as part of this. One of them certainly, if the landowner wanted to do that, who I don't believe is here tonight for the second month in a row, which should, I think, tell you something. But if the landowner wanted to do that, that's certainly an option, that person could take the road. We've had the previous conversations with the town of Addison. They indicated in their resolution supporting the larger jurisdictional transfer that they'd be open to discussing it. So it could be transferred to the town. It could be given back to the landowner on both sides, who happens to be the same person. There's a number of opportunities for what might happen there. All of them benefit the county. The good thing about this proposal is, as it is, yes, you are spending money, but the net cost over time will save you money. And the reason is you're going to have less net mileage if you're able to accomplish the jurisdictional transfers that are associated with this project. You will have net less mileage, and over time you will save money because of that. So if you're truly looking 50 years out, it's inarguable that it will cost you less money.
Just to point on accidents, you last voted on this January 9th. I have on the screen, January 14th was the next accident at that intersection of in 83. So you see, young person was injured at that accident. Injury accident happened less than a week after you had voted it down. Just pointing out there that this is not just numbers, not just lines on a map. These are real lives, real people that you're impacting someday, potentially. Not just land, but people in their lives.
I said it last month because nobody will. Someone's going to get killed at one of these intersections. And in my conversation with Supervisor Berg, that was the first thing he said to me.
Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the reasons just stated by Josh and Mr. Schmidt, we need to take care of S in the 83 intersections and the S and 175 intersections. I believe that's important and something that should be taken care of. Once again, I will say I do not think that the extension of County Highway W is a good use of our taxpayer money at this time. So I would offer a resolution, an amendment to Resolution 68 that would eliminate the County Highway W extension from the project. And if you start at line 9, it would be County Highway Project, County Highway S. Eliminating the S after projects, County Highway W, and. Line 27, after and believes, you would remove the extension of County Trunk Highway W between State Trunk Highway 175 and State Trunk Highway 83, along with, and then you would leave in the realignment project, eliminate, on line 29, eliminate the S from projects. That replace were with was not. Line 31, to complete, eliminate these and put this project, singular, take out the S. Line 35, not to exceed, remove 2,550,000 and replace it with 450,000. Line 36, remove extension of County Trunk Highway W between State Trunk Highway 175, State Trunk Highway 83, and the rest remains. Line 37, after project, eliminate the S. Line 42, remove 2,550,000 and replace it with 450,000. And then at the end, add language to page 1, comma, and future vacating of State Trunk Highway 83 north of County Trunk Highway S. That is my amendment to Resolution 68.
Okay. Do a second. Supervisor Krebs. I'll start off the, Yeah, we got it. I'll start off the discussion. Number one, you make a good point, but one of the goals for this improvement is to get as much traffic as we can off of S. By improving S, you're gonna have more people going at an intersection that has a sight line of about 200 yards. You know how fast cars going at 55 miles an hour cover 200 yards? Pretty darn fast. It still makes it a dangerous intersection. If we do the whole project, we will remove most of the traffic. Probably you're gonna eliminate 75% of the traffic that uses that, and it's gonna be 75% less people that are gonna be in danger of being T-boned crossing that intersection with somebody that's speeding coming southbound. So, I think that's, without the entire project together, by doing S, does nothing to improve the safety, other than making it a little bit easier to see, so you're not looking over your shoulder, but it still makes that's a dangerous intersection, and we need to minimize the amount of traffic on that. And by doing the whole project, that's gonna move traffic off of S and onto W. They're not gonna use S anymore. The people in the subdivision and people up there, those are only the people that are gonna be using that intersection. So it's gonna cut down from people cutting up 83 and then cutting across on S. That's not gonna happen. Supervisor Berg.
I'd like to elaborate on that. It's not only gonna cut down on the traffic on S and 175. Mrs. Bishop, Supervisor Bishop called me when she found out about the reconsideration. One of her concerns was the traffic coming off of 175 south, turning onto Highway 83, and their directional's not clearing. There's no cross streets between the new Highway W and 175 on 83 other than Highway S. People aren't gonna make that turn no more. They're gonna go up to Highway W, make one turn right, and go into Hartford. So not only do we eliminate the problem on Highway S and 175, we eliminate the problem on Highway 83 and 175, both directions. The intersection of Highway 83 and 175 is almost equally as blind as S and 175. So by just doing Highway S, you still have all that traffic going through that triangle intersection. By putting the Highway W extension through, you're taking 90% of the cars that travel 83, the S, or the 175 off of that intersection and putting it on either into Allington or onto 175 at W. That's what I did not see last month until I sat down and talked to people, and I talked to Josh, and I looked at it closely. You need both to work together, and it's a win-win when they work together. Josh talked about the St. Lawrence firemen, about the accident that was out there on the 14th of January. If anybody doesn't know, I come from Hartford Fire and Rescue for 21 years. You guys read about them in the paper. I was there, and I saw these accidents out on Highway 83, and there's bad accidents out there. And this is gonna make that whole section better.
Thank you. Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, Supervisor Bishop made an accusation, or what sounded like an accusation, that seemed unfair and unjustified. I'm going to ask if she wants to step back from that accusation and apologize for it.
Yeah, that's not really germane to the conversation. I'll overrule that.
Okay.
It's out of order, sorry.
All right, can we come back to that when it is in order? If we're, is it out of order because we're focused on the amendment?
I can't imagine that being in order.
Yeah, so.
Okay. All right.
It's something you may want to just take up as a personal note between the two of you. Supervisor Goddard?
Yes, thank you. Don, you mentioned that there's going to be a lot more traffic coming out there on Highway S if this isn't done. But yet, we just heard from Josh, or from Scott it was, I'm not sure, I believe it was Josh, that there's not going to be any more traffic coming on that road, not in the foreseeable future. Now, the only time people are using Highway S and 83 is coming off of Highway W, coming out of Allington. So instead of putting that excess traffic, taking it from Highway S, and you want to take it now and put it a little bit more to the south by putting this bypass in, what you're doing is just taking from point A, the traffic, and moving it to point B is all you're doing. You already have the roads at point A, Highway S. Improve them however you need to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you, okay, but you're taking two extremely dangerous intersections, one of them you're eliminating, one of them you're minimizing, okay? Traffic studies, when you look at it, it's the potential for danger. I mean, that's why they do roundabouts. The reason they do roundabouts, because you don't have T-bone accidents, right? Somebody goes through a stop sign, when you're going through, boom, it's a serious accident. Looking at, if we can get the majority of cars that travel on S off of S, it's going to be, the likelihood of accidents are going to be reduced exponentially. If you, when you do these traffic studies and when you try to direct traffic, you try to move the traffic to the safest location. And we're taking we're creating an intersection that's going to be great sight lines. Yes, it still has the potential to have accidents, but it has sight lines where you can see the traffic. You don't have anybody coming over a hill, and if they're speeding, or even if they're going to speed limit, they're right on top of you. You do your look to the left, look to the right, If you don't look back to the left when you go back again, that car is there. So that's why, you know, the safety is paramount. So,
Okay, so then you're saying really that there isn't going to be any more traffic and that you're just going to improve a new intersection, so the old intersection doesn't have to handle anything, or not much anymore, like it used to. So why are we spending money on that? Why aren't we giving that over to the townships also, or trying to? Highway S, from old Highway 83.
It's a great idea. As a
You
matter
know,
of
it
fact,
would be
we're
a nice
proposing
thing to
that.
do then.
That's
But,
exactly what we're proposing.
but rather than having this new road coming through that's gonna cost you over $2 million, at $400,000 or $500,000, you can improve the other intersections to an extent that they should be as good, including the sight patterns, because you can knock down a hill.
That's a state highway
It's a
for
state
one
highway,
thing.
we can't do that.
Yeah, I know.
Sole jurisdiction. for
On
the West.
175?
It's a state highway.
Yeah, you can't knock that one down.
Yeah.
I was thinking you're on Old Highway 83, and that, because there isn't much of a hill there
Right.
and that, so. But there's no reason to spend that kind of money, especially when we as a county, or as the old county board was trying to do, was get rid of debt totally. And why not use this money to fund other projects within the county here, instead of borrowing money, instead of taking from that $10 million that's not costing the taxpayer any money? Okay? I'd like to know how you borrow money and don't cost somebody something. So it's coming out of point A in the pocket to feed point B in the pocket? Is that what it's doing? You know, I mean, this is playing a shell game, is what you're doing here, and I don't agree with it. I am not voting for it.
Thank you. Supervisor Hartwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one more question. What is, this new extension W would come up to 175, and what's the speed limit gonna be on that area? Do you have any idea what that would be, Scott?
The whole 175 right there is posted at 55 currently, and still would be at 55.
So if this new W extension, what would the speed limit be on that?
The one we showed you last month, the purple line coming up would be a 45 mile an hour. So it's 55 mile an hour coming down to there. But the one benefit you really have with this intersection is both sides. You go on current highway W right now, you gotta stop because you're turning, right? You're not going through an intersection. Sometimes when you go through these wide open intersections, people don't stop. Here, you have to physically make two curves to get to the intersection. You gotta slow down to actually get to that intersection. So that's one of the real benefits. You look at this plan too, going at this intersection down the far right corner, you're coming up on the curve here, coming up to a curve here, and coming up and teeing up the intersection 90 degrees. You're forced to slow down to get to this intersection. That's a great benefit that you have here versus a standard T intersection where you're coming for miles and miles and miles and potentially just are zoning out and miss the intersection. Except for the one drunk person who did it one time.
So what's gonna stop the daydreamers so they don't go right through and run the stop sign there?
The great sight distance you have there is the great equalizer you have here. You're able to see those people and react to them. That's what you do when you're looking at intersections. You want to have enough sight distance, so if there is that daydreamer not stopping, you're actually looking before you go, right? There was one police officer, I forget where it was, that was actually T-boned recently. If he would have looked back left, even though he had the green light, he maybe wouldn't have gotten hit. You gotta do your due diligence and look both ways to make sure that person's turning or stopping or coming or not coming. That kind of accident, daydreaming, that happens everywhere.
So do they still install the rumble strips or something, a warning, so they would know that intersection's coming up?
We certainly can. There's rumble strips coming south on W right now. That was done years ago because we were having accident intersection. Then we realigned the intersection, left the rumble strips in place because we wanted to make sure people realized they were coming up to a stop because of the curve that was in there. Certainly something we could do to the south. Generally speaking, a lot of people in the area don't like rumble strips because they have a lot of noise. That's one of the reasons we don't do them on Highway K going on 144 to the lake.
Yeah, but it also wakes up people. I know down on Highway Y, when they took the rumble strips out, that's when we started getting the bad accidents there on 60.
It's definitely a tool in the toolbox.
So that's my big concern is because the people have a nice road to drive on. They're gonna be daydreaming and go right through that intersection. So I'm not really in favor of it.
The good thing you have here, though, is that they're daydreaming going through the S and 83 intersection. Not a lot of sight distance there, especially if they're coming south. All right, here you got a nice wide open intersection. So that's the difference there. There's putting people in a good position to make good decisions.
Thank you. Supervisor Burke?
Can I address the accusations that keep coming up quickly?
In what respect?
Huh?
In what respect?
The one that Supervisor Bishop made in the beginning. I mean, I think they're kind of directed at me. Can I just speak on that quickly before we vote on anything?
I think we can forego that for now. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Schleif?
I said it last month and I'll say it again, we're gonna kill somebody there. And our duty as the board of directors for the county, as county supervisors, is to look at the big picture. And if we let ourselves be badgered into a bad decision by a small group of people, understanding they're landowners, they're gonna lose land, but we're in this for the greater good. Let's look at the big picture and let's vote.
We do have a set of strategic priorities. We've more than met our burden of proof to those strategic priorities. And I think it's for us to vote no on this is to say that we don't believe in our strategic priorities. That's a problem.
Right now, I want to clarify, you have an amendment in front of you.
Yep.
That if you vote no, you'd be doing the opposite. You want to vote.
Right, yeah, on this one, if you vote,
If you want the original plan, I want to make sure that's
Yep.
clear. Because I think you could have a whole bunch of people confused. That's what I was calling you about.
Yep.
So let's make
Okay.
sure we have absolute clarification.
Okay. Obvious, okay, good. Okay, seeing no further, we are voting on the amendment, which would in effect be repairing S only and not W. W would no longer be part of the plan. So a yes vote would be taking W off the plan, and a no vote would be we would continue back to the original resolution. Okay, anything else? Okay.
This is a simple majority.
Yes. We'll vote electronically on this. This is for the amendment.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. The amendment fails. Supervisor Basil.
After 2.5 hours of discussing this road, I call the question, the resolution.
Okay, second by that was Supervisor Basil, second by Supervisor Kelly. This will be a two-thirds vote
To call the question.
to call a question. Okay. Vote electronically? We're just calling it, this is just the vote to call the question. So we can vote that by voice, a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll go on to there no further discussion? We're back to the original resolution. And again, I want to reiterate how important it is that when we set strategic priorities and we task our administrator and the staff into meeting those strategic priorities, we need to respect those strategic priorities, look at the big picture, how many people are going to be affected by this. If this is voted down, voted no? Yep, okay, all right. Vote electronically. Motion fails. one vote. Okay, we're gonna move up the Heritage Trails, 2018 Resolution 71, authorize Heritage Trails Lake Development and Mining Project. Supervisor Basil? Supervisor Bullowa? Jamie, you wanna?
Good evening. Am I on, Don?
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm Jamie Ludovic. I'm the director of the Parks Department. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all. I know it's late, so we'll try to move through this item at an appropriate speed for the merit of which the project is. So tonight, I'm just going to quickly introduce and hopefully attempt to answer most of your questions. So we are going to ask if you just want to quickly let us get through some of our content. We will entertain questions on what we're calling our Heritage Trails Lake Development Project. So I just wanted to remind the board that in June, when you adopted the fiscal sustainability plan, I stood right here and I put on this slide that we were going to be looking to seek proposals for this project at Heritage Trails when that plan was approved and as it was adopted by all of you. So as such, as we've looked at this closer over the past 9 months, we really are hitting on a lot of what we're trying to do with the park system, achieving financial sustainability, creating partnerships, improving the priority parks, and then really looking at what those parks look like and putting a strategy behind the future of what that park system is. So I wanted to start the presentation, and I'm going to introduce Eric Hyde, who's our Parks Property Manager, to talk through some of the details and technical items around the direction we're heading. But I wanted to start with what the process is because it's been a little bit unique. This is a type of project that isn't done often by a lot of other governmental entities, and so we have a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario that's happening. So I wanted to explain that to all of you. So we are asking, and this isn't so dissimilar to the Highway W conversation that just ended, we are asking for you to approve the concept of this project tonight. We believe that we're at the front end of the project. We have enough information where you, in theory, could stop this project if you did not want to move forward based on what we believe would be the consequences or the impact to the adjoining properties. So we are asking via the resolution in front of you for you to approve the concept tonight. If we move the process forward, this is where a lot of work begins. So we would be looking at doing an RFP with a firm selection process, so a competitive process whereby we are developing a best practices process for selecting and developing a contract with an operator, which we believe is a 6 to 12 month process, maybe longer. We would also then move forward with updating the county zoning. This is what would trigger the public hearings that are required per the state statute. So if we move to change the county zoning, there's a public hearing that happens at the committee level, and then that comes before you as well. That is another opportunity for you to provide input related, now it's working, for you to provide input related to specific things that you would like to see within the project. We do plan on including within our competitive process a joint awarded operator and parks public mitigation hearing. So this is not something that is required. It's something that we believe is necessary so that we can work through some of the concerns that we're hearing with an operator and then work through those in our contract with a selected operator. So I am not going to stand up here tonight, and neither is Eric, and try to address any specific questions related to what we will do and won't do. We just simply don't have enough information to make those commitments. And then there's also the award. If we award to a firm, there has to be a reclamation plan based on input, public information meetings required per NR 135, followed by a separate process, which the Public Works Committee specifically wanted to tie to this, which we believe believe is a 1 to 2 year process with full public input to develop a master plan for what the future of this park looks like. So all of those things, the master plan coming back to Public Works and this board, in addition to any future money that's spent, all steps that we would see moving forward. So with that, I want to introduce Eric Hyde. He's our Parks Property Manager. He has led the effort on this project. It has been, as I mentioned, going on. There's been a team of people that have been involved in sort of getting us to where we are. So, all yours.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Jamie. So we'll start out right here on the map right here. You can see this is just a potential concept. None of the stuff has been planned, but it's basically just to get the creative minds going of what this park could potentially look like. So I'll start out with a little background. Currently, the main uses in the park, the Sheriff Shooting Range resides in the old former location of the mining extraction. And then there's also soccer fields. Currently, the soccer club does not use these fields, so next year we're looking at not mowing the fields. They currently just use Ackerman's Grove. Can everyone hear me all right? There's also a disc golf course that resides in the east part and the north part. As you can see, Heritage Trails is basically shaped like a cross. There's also foot golf and hiking trails out there. This is just a little history. The site was owned by the Gundrum family, and from the 1950s to the early 1970s, there was about a 20 to 30 acre operation there. It was purchased by the county in 1974 to become a park, and that's basically when that activity ceased, except for a few smaller highway projects. So right now, we've reached out to the adjacent landowners to inform them of the meetings and our plan. We also had a meeting there. We issued a press release last week that was picked up by the West Bend Washington County Daily on the front. It was on the front page. We've also posted it on our Facebook, on our websites, and all that. We've had discussions with the town polk regarding zoning. We've also spoken to several local operators, basically to gauge the interest of whether this is a good idea, whether there's a need for it in the industry, in the economy, and all that kind of stuff. And basically every operator I've said is there's a need for material out here. With how strict all the local town zoning is, that they don't see enough material here within the next decade. So that has a lot of economical impacts too. We've also reached out to the soccer club. As I mentioned, they have no intent to use the fields next year's, and we've also reached out to the snowmobile club as there is a trail connection through the park. So just some kind of secondary effects out here to mention. We are looking at the possibility of relocating the main park entrance road to off of 164. We've had some discussions with the DOT. There's also been some concerns raised by the neighbors, so right now that's not really something that we think is going to happen, so we'll probably be sticking with our main park entrance road, but there is potential for that to change. We're also looking at completing the Sheriff Range, the 300-yard range. You can see the area outlined in yellow. There's currently no berms there, so we want to finish there to just make that range safer. We've spoken with the sheriff about this project too, to see if there's anything else we can address for them, any kind of future ideas, concepts they had out there. And then also, obviously, the master plan, which the Public Works Committee specifically added to the resolution, added funds to make sure that we proceed with that immediately. This again shows the concept, and then on the right map it shows basically the white line is the extent of the 91 acres that we're looking at opening up. You can see the lake up to the north. This is just a close-up of the south end of the project. This is where the former operation took place. It's about 29 acres. There's currently no park amenities there, just the main park entrance. There's not even any trails to this section. Likely, if the project were to go through, it'd be low-impact recreation, natural ponds, just kind of restored naturally. Right now, it's just basically open grass field with minimal environmental value or any recreational value. The north end of the project is where the bulk material is that we would look to extract to create the lake. It's got the largest financial incentive, 91 acres total. We believe it'll take 7 to 15 years to take all of that material. Looks like a big area, but the way operations work right now, they don't just strip mine it like they used to. They work on chunks, they restore chunks, they work on chunks, they restore it. So it's kind of a continual process. And then the material out there, 7.22 million cubic yards. That's a conservative estimate. We took 20% off the top to account for pour material and topsoil and stuff like that. I'm gonna get a little nerdy here right now, but this is what we call geomorphologic reclamation. So basically, we want to keep the Kettle Moraine aesthetics. Right now, you can see the green line is the park border, the yellow line is the extent of extraction, and the blue line is where the pond would be. But you have to figure that the pond is going to drop down about 80 feet. So you can see how the yellow line basically shows that there's high points and low points that are going to be bordering this. So basically, it's manipulating how this kind of area looks. Right now, the flat soccer field doesn't really even, feel like the Kettle Moraine area. So this kind of addresses the wetlands in the primary environmental corridor. You can see that there's no wetlands in here on the environmental primary corridor. There's some overlap, but that's mostly from mapping errors. We've site verified it. There's one hill slope that's in there that's all prickly ash and buckthorn, just not good plants, basically. One thing to consider, when they do this mining activity, everything is internally drained, so there's no chance of runoff or anything like that into wetlands or neighboring properties. So not to say that there's not any negative impacts. There's obviously neighbors that can be affected with things like dust, and there will be issues. We can't do everything to stop any issues, but we will try our hardest to mitigate and make sure that we hold the operator responsible. I'm not going to go through all of these. I believe most of you have been sent a lot of the issues that we've heard from some of the neighbors. So getting towards the justification for this, right now Heritage Trails is a priority park. Of the 6 priority parks, it brings in the least amount of revenue. Soccer clubs aren't using it. We just feel like it's not a very well utilized park, and our data kind of proves that too. It's kind of a well-known fact that parks with access to water are more desirable. Beaches, fishing, swimming, I don't think anyone's going to object to that. And one of the big things that we like about this is that man-made lakes have significantly less regulations from the state. Right now, at our other parks at Glacier Hills, Yar, we can't build a new beach, we can't expand an existing beach per state law. So what we have there is it, and any state natural water. So looking into the future with recreational demands, we think it's important to have the ability to provide this. Most of the woodlands and trails are preserved. Again, the largest financial incentive, local economic impact. This will create about 4 to 5 jobs. It's not a lot, but there will be jobs created from this. And quite frankly, there's a demand for this aggregate material in the economy, and it's important for everything. I mean, people like roads, people like growth. This is a necessity. Also, going back into all of our park surveys, beaches, fishing, swimming ranks highly on all of it. One of the surveys asked what kind of park people want to have, and the second highest one was nature-based parks with hiking, camping, lake swimming, nature appreciation. And one of the least valuable ones were ones with ball fields and sports and stuff like that. So this is swapping that out while making enough money to redevelop the park and to have excess money to support other operations in the park. This is Foxbrook Park in Waukesha County. This is a 22-acre sand and gravel extraction site. Right now, it's one of their mid-popular beaches. It brings in about $45,000 a year in revenue for them. There's just a close-up and some pictures. So getting to the financial incentive, which we think is a good conservative estimate of $3 million to $6 million through royalties and leases. The cost to redevelop the park, anywhere from 1 to 2.5 millions. And we're recommending that any excess revenue go into the Washington County Parks Endowment Fund to offset future operation for basically the perpetuity for the park system. These are just any of the reclamation options you can do just to kind of show you what we're really looking to, what we're really excited to. Basically being told that we don't have much more dollars to invest in our park systems unless we create them, and this is just a prime example of how we can do that, how we can turn our least productive park, least desirable park, priority park, into one of the most highly desirable ones. Again, just touching on our guiding principles, we feel like this hits most of them. Again, the next steps, what we're asking here is to approve the concept as we move forward. And I guess we'll take some questions now.
Supervisor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, for the people who are here in regards to the park and the gallery, I appreciate that you are here. Something I really believe in is getting the people out to be involved in your government. A few days ago, I had a little bit of a altercation with a few people on social media in regards to this project, and several falsehoods were made about what our intentions are and what we're doing, so I want to clear those up with Ms. Ludovic right now, if that's okay.
Sure.
We are at the beginning of this project, so basically the notice that you kind of put in the paper and talking to the landlord, the landowners in the area is basically your jumping off point, correct?
Yes.
So we're not hiding anything. In fact, we're going out to the public, correct?
Correct. I will add that I do know that some of the neighbors were disappointed in the timeliness of our first letter. And for that, at this point, all we can say is that we are sorry. Honestly, we thought of it and issued it, and it wasn't as in time for the Public Works meeting as they would have liked.
All right.
Sorry, it's not,
Sir,
sorry, it's not a public hearing.
it's not a public.
It's not a public hearing, please. Thank you.
Okay, this is a contentious issue, and I understand that, and I understand that you're here tonight, and like I said, I appreciate that. All I'm trying to do is clear up some of the misstatements that has happened. Now, we're not going to fill this in with garbage and turn this into a landfill, are we?
No.
Okay, that was one of the things that was stated. So that's unequivocally untrue, correct?
Yes.
Okay. One of the other things, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a moment there. So we're not landfilling it. We also will.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. Without an operator on board, clean fill or how they end up reclaiming this as they go along in certain portions is an unknown. So, but in terms of garbage, that is false.
Okay, so that was one of the statements that was made. The other amenities that are within the park, those will be undisturbed, correct? The hiking, other your hiking trails and equipment and,
So the parking lot would essentially be where the center of the lake is right now.
Okay.
Most of the valuable hiking trails are all in the wooded areas. The wooded areas are not being touched. There's some trails that go around the perimeter of the soccer field. Those would obviously be gone. A lot of the disc golf holes would be displaced, but we've already been working the past year with the designer to kind of redesign the course anyways. So that's something that we look forward to moving forward and keeping open during the process of this. So, and
okay, so we're still going to have a lot of the amenities there. We're not looking to strip mine the entire park as another claim was made, right?
Nope, absolutely not.
Okay. So again, if you're here because you think any of these things are true, then you've come here under false pretenses, and that's not good. I don't want that. But I do, again, I appreciate that you are here. We want to have an open discussion with you. We want to talk about trying to find ways to finance our parks so that our parks go into the future. First thing that's going to happen when you leave parks on tax rolls is they stop mowing the grass, they stop taking care of the equipment, they stop painting the buildings. These parks, we asked these people to make our parks sustainable so that they will not be subject to the cuts that this board would have to make in the future. And that's the goal that we're going for in this project. And we love our parks. That's why we want to do this. We want to keep them forever. And we also want to make sure that our neighbors enjoy them forever, and we don't want you to be inconvenienced with dust or whatever. We absolutely want to work with you to make sure that any problems there might be are straightened out. These parks are for you. This is what we're trying to say, for you, okay? And that's what this is all about. So anybody who just wants to make up stories about, what we're trying to wreck a park or something like that is just ridiculous. I don't always agree with everybody in this room, but I respect everybody in this room, and I know what they're about, and they're good folks. So with that, thank you very much.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a shotgun worth of questions here, and they're all unrelated. So, first, if we proceed with this man-made lake, is that considered an navigable water for shoreline zoning purposes?
No.
So all the surrounding properties would not be affected by shoreland?
Correct, and we actually found a mismarked lake that ended up on a hillside that we're working to remove that navigability around, which will assist the neighbors in the northwest part of the park.
Okay. I know you said you're talking about not having access on 164 now, but would that have even been possible from the state?
Currently, we have 2 access points. We have a 120-foot connection there and a 30-foot connection there, and they're both pre-existing driveways. So from what I've been told, the state can't technically deny you to upgrade an existing connection. It's when you're accessing a new one.
Okay, so improving it would be at this.
I think so. I mean,
a
they haven't flat
possibility.
out said that we can't do it, but they said they don't think we have good sight distances for that, so we're evaluating that.
Okay. The part of the report referenced creating a master plan of Heritage Trails Park. Would that plan, the report says would go before the Public Works Committee? Would that also come back to the county board for approval?
Our planner says it could.
I'm wondering if it has to or if it will.
It has not in the past.
I would ask her my 2 cents that it does come back to the county board. So, right now we're conceptual, but we vote on it again when if it gets to a point of 30 or 70% plans, whatever the number is. The shooting range berms, would that actually be built by the operator as part of their agreement, or is that something the county does after the fact?
We're looking to make that part of the requirement.
Okay, same with the actual pond portion. Would the operator be required as part of the reclamation process forming that actual and grading that out, or is that all done after the fact?
We're looking to have that part of the operator. Pending approval of this, we've reached out to Cascade Engineering to come out and do some drilling core samples in the soccer field area. That's the area that we don't have as much data other than just well construction logs as far as whether the material's any good. So once we get that, that'll kind of help clear up some answers.
Okay, that was another question is how much boring or data is available?
So the southern part of the operation, there's still exposed shelves, so you have about a 40 to 50 foot lens that you can go in there with a shovel and see the material that you have there.
Okay.
So the north end is really the question point that we want to gather. So, and we're also looking into adding into the RFP documents that upon awarding an operator that we're going to be giving them basically a window of time up to like 180 days where they can do any exploration that they need to do to determine if it's a viable economic site. So, I mean, at that point, if we come back and bad material is found and it's not economical and we don't have any operators, then, I mean, that essentially will probably kill the project.
They have a out. If the operator does their own drilling, can the county write it into the RFP that they would also have the rights to that information, so we could use that to share with other people?
Certainly, yep.
Lots of talk about possible contamination from gravel pits. Could you address some of that?
Sure. Here's 4 local parks that were all done through aggregate extraction, mining, whatever you want to call it. They were all sites like that. Sand and gravel, there's not blasting. I mean, it's a big site where they're moving sand and gravel. There's not much contamination sources. The site's internally drained. The future lake that we have planned out has an incredibly small watershed. A lot of times when you see contamination issues is when you have a new contributing watershed of agricultural lands or something like that where you have a source. So we don't believe we're opening up a large source. I can't say that won't happen. There's possibilities it can happen. But I would say generally it's not a huge source of contamination.
Okay. Does the town of Polk, does their town board or planning commission have any input or say on a project like this?
So the county, we have our own zoning over county-owned lands. We've talked to the town and said we want to include them in our contract discussions to make sure we address their concerns that they would normally have in a quarrying permit. So that is something that we want to work with them and get guidance so that we're not creating, we also don't want to create an unlevel playing field among the market either. That's not our place. So we want to make sure that that's even through competitors in the industry.
There is a public hearing in the town required as well. But it would be the county's public hearing.
Okay. You said that there would be no to minimal amount of the woods being affected currently?
Correct. There's if you've been to the park on the east side of the parking lot, there's about a 40-foot wide strip on a slope where there's trees. Not the highest quality woodlot, that would be gone. The south side of the soccer fields, it's mostly brush, so there wouldn't be any trees there.
Okay. The snowmobile trail, would we be able to reroute that or have it restored, at the end of the project?
Yeah, that's something we still can offer.
The water of the new pond, like whatever we're gonna call it, would that water be, state water? Would that be owned by the state?
From everything I've heard, it will not be.
Okay,
It's a man-made lake. If you go onto their DNR website, you can go through all their questions, and it's not a man-made. Man-made lakes are not regulated by.
So there would be no need for, public access to it other than what the county chooses to provide as public access to that?
Correct.
Okay.
Supervisor Krebs, I'm gonna let someone else ask questions. I'm gonna come back to you.
I got
Okay.
3 more.
Yeah, I'm gonna let somebody else.
Okay.
Okay, I'll come back. Supervisor Martin. Yeah, okay. Yeah, click in again.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Parks and Planning Committee staff for meeting with the immediate neighbors, because I think that was only fair for that to occur. But I have to ask, what is the urgency for this resolution?
From my standpoint, it isn't urgent. It's just been in the process, and we believe we're at a point in our strategy meetings that we don't, for lack of a better answer, we don't want to pursue a lot more work on this without an operator and without approval from the county board that it's a direction that they want to go. I hate to minimize what the neighborhood complaints were. I know we concerns where I know we breezed through that slide. I did send emails in advance to all of you. From our perspective, those aren't going to change. There are probably more of the similar concerns from more surrounding neighbors. I hope that you'll all take that into consideration and make your policy decision accordingly. We can certainly wait. I would ask what other information you would be looking for.
Regarding?
Before you'd be ready to make a decision on moving forward.
Okay, the jurisdiction of the park is with the town of Polk. So why is this being discussed prior to any rezoning approval by the town of Polk? I do not believe a commitment has been made by the town or the town board relative to this. I do not believe the county should be working around the comprehensive plan, but should be consistent with the town's plan and not keep the town out of the process. I think that's a real concern if the county is going to foster its authority over a town and tell the town what should happen. I think a lot of confusion lies within the town not having a public hearing, and we're talking about it as though we have all the jurisdiction over that all. I understand when the comprehensive plan was developed, questions were asked. Is the town going to have authority and speak to this, or are they going to be told what to do?
I'm sorry, Supervisor Merton, the zoning authority rests strictly with the county in this particular matter. Now, we will have to likely amend certain zoning ordinances within our own code, and that will require a public hearing to be held in the town. However, as Central Services Director Ludovic indicated, that is a county public hearing, and that input can be taken by the county, but the county strictly has authority over how it zones that park and the use in that particular park.
So because the county owns land in a municipality, the county can do whatever they want, and the municipality has nothing to say about it?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Pretty bad.
That's the way the laws are written.
Oh,
It's a
city,
state law.
okay.
I will add that this is consistent with both the town and the county's comprehensive plan. We discovered that it is currently zoned park. So our end
Correct.
use for this is intended to be a park. This is, if you look at it one way, a way to construct a new park. The end use will be park. We will just be amending the definition of park within the county ordinances.
But you're talking about a quarrying district, which is different than a park district. I don't know where your definition comes from, but I know that's not the town's definition.
The county has jurisdiction, period.
County has jurisdiction,
Correct.
period. They can do whatever
Over-
they want.
Over the town, that's correct, yes. The
Oh,
way
is that
you
right?
stated is exactly right, yes.
That's unfortunate, because that's where a wedge is going to be drawn between municipalities and the county. If
Not-
actions are taken.
We've already had conversations with the town chairman, communication with the town chairman from the town of Polk. We'll continue to have those communications. We've also had communications with the town attorney. We'll continue to have those communications.
I've had communication with the town chair as well. I
Well, then the
guess
county
the-
is.
Go ahead.
Then the county is.
Pardon?
Then the county is having communication.
Communication by telling them this is what we're going to do.
There will be a public hearing on the zoning of the park.
There will be a public hearing, and how much credence will that public hearing have upon what the county is planning on doing?
I'm not sure I follow your
How much credence will
questions.
the public hearing comments have on what the county is proposing to do?
I guess I don't understand
I mean,
the question.
I can take a shot at that. Supervisor Merton, when you speak to these individuals, I can say that some of us, I mean, we do have genuine concern for some of what their issues might be. And I hope to, through the process with the operators next to us, do our best to mitigate what concerns we can. Now, some things, there is going to be noise, there is going to be dust when the wind is right. I mean, there are going to be certain things that are outside of our control, but if there is something that is within our reach, it is our intent to try to achieve it.
Okay, the Highway 164 access, I'm still confused, I asked that question one other time. Highway 164 will have access to truck traffic regardless, whether it comes out on the road further to the north on 164, or whether it comes out on Highway E, which will exit off and move toward 164. Either way, 164 will be affected for traffic. That's just understandable, one way or the other. Am I understanding it? You're not talking about the drive to the shooting range?
To clarify, the 164 exit would be a future main park entrance road. That would not be an entrance
To the
or
north.
exit used for any material being hauled out.
Okay,
That's all off of County Highway E.
Okay, so will there still be two accesses off of Highway E? One for the shooting range and one for the park?
Right now, there's 3 entrances to the park. There's 2 maintenance entrances, and there's the main park entrance. So as far as how that all gets configured out, we haven't gone to that point to lay that out yet. So that'd be something we'd talk to the sheriff to make sure that they continue to have safe access to the shooting range.
Okay. There's been some concern about the destruction of green space, and I guess you can throw that however way you want to. My question is, will the lake be clean water, which I expect it to be?
Yes, if the groundwater there is clean, that's what the lake water is. So
And how many years will it take to develop the lake?
we're estimating 7 to 15 years.
I want to also make a comment that the postcard that was sent out stating it was a public service announcement was sent to residents around the park and requested to be shared on Facebook or whatever. Items on that card, I want to alert you to, are untrue and damaging to the parties that are mentioned in that document. So I hope that no one is criticized in any respect for that statement. Thank you.
Supervisor Brandt?
I'd just like to take this opportunity to I wasn't at the Public Works meeting. I would have supported it at the meeting. I was on vacation, having a good time. But as president of the Village of Slinger, I'm encouraged by this. The village has grown by a tremendous amount and probably will continue into the future. Anytime that we can give more recreational opportunities, and there's no doubt that this park needs to be improved. It's got a very limited use, and the creation of this lake would be a tremendous benefit. Yes, there are opportunities for our village residents with our own park system. I was one of the proponents to build our swimming pond, but that turned out to be kind of a bad thing with the state because it was a man-made pond, and our engineers put in a liner which made it a pool, according to the state. So we're debating right now whether or not we can continue that facility. We may go to a splash pad ourselves, and this takes away opportunities for people that like to swim and things like that. So I'm encouraged that this would be developed into a 32-acre lake that would provide swimming and other recreation for the residents of Slinger and the surrounding area.
Supervisor Slav.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of my questions was already answered, that this is going to be basically groundwater. There's no springs there or anything.
I mean, it's as soon as you hit the water table. I mean, just like if you're at the beach, you scoop out a handful of sand, water fills in. That's, I mean, when you're in the water table, you're in the water table. The sand and gravel is so porous that the water's there.
Okay, and when you said 7 to 15 years to fill, is that taking the gravel out and then filling, or is that for it to seep full?
No, I mean, it pretty much, the way they extract sand and gravel from that is either using basically like a conveyor belt that kind of grabs it that can go about 60 feet deep, or they use a backhoe that can go about 30 feet deep, and then it basically gets sent to the processing area where they haul it out. So I mean, the water fills in rather quickly. It's not like an old quarry where they're pumping out water to keep it open. They're going under the water to pull it out.
Okay. And then the other thing, maybe there's a lot of misunderstanding with what you have to do to reclaim after a mining operation. I know when we bought the park, it was just like an abandoned gravel pit. That doesn't happen anymore, and maybe you can fill us in on when that law changed. I have a cousin that worked for Michaels that his job is reclaiming.
Sure.
I mean,
So-
they have very strict rules.
Yeah, so NR 135 came in basically the early 2000s, and basically to protect municipalities from having these big eyesores and quite frankly some unsafe conditions. So NR 135 requires minimum 3-to-1 side slopes. Every area that was exposed has to have topsoil put over, reseeded. It has to have a planned use that is of value to the municipality after, and part of that is also holding a financial assurance. So the county right now is the regulator, or kind of reviews all that and holds financial assurances. So there's financial insurances out there for over $1 million. So basically, if someone has an operation of 200 acres and they leave it all open, they calculate how much it costs to go back out there, spread topsoil and seed it, and kind of protect the site. So.
And there are inspections done after the fact to ensure that the reclaim is proper, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I wanted to extend to Supervisor Brandt that if they end up with just going to a splash pad and have any problems in the city of Slinger, or excuse me, the village of Slinger, they are more than welcome, and I extend this to all of the people of Washington County, to come to our world-class Veterans Aquatic Center, which is a wonderful swimming facility right in the city of Hartford. So, shameless commercial, absolutely. I did want to ask, because I think that Supervisor Merton brings up some legitimate concerns as regards to dust and noise and things along that line. I'm curious, you're saying 7 to 15 years to develop as regards to the fill of the water. How long would they actually be mining in that facility to extract all of the gravel they're looking at?
We're looking at 7 to 15 years. It's hard to put a hard timeline on that because it kind of depends on the economy too. If there's a big tank in the economy and there's not much growth going on, then there's not much need for material, so.
So the soonest this would actually be the lake that we're talking about would be 7 years, and you would have extraction over a 7-year period.
Yeah, I would tend to lean more towards the 10-12 mark.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure, because that leads toward, I think what Supervisor Merton was talking about, and that's not having a park zone, but actually mining type of thing. This is not something that's going to be done in one season, and then we wait for 7 to 10 years for the water to fill. You're literally going to be in a position where you're going to have that equipment. And then, as far as the season, this is done just in the summer? Is it spring, summer, fall, 6 months of the year, 12 months? What are you looking at? Do you have an?
I think most time of the year, I mean, that'll depend on the operator to determine that.
Okay, but so for the winter time, I'm assuming it's frozen, they leave it alone, so you're looking at, do they keep going? So this would be year-round. I just want to make sure that we all have the vision of what we're talking about here. Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Supervisor Kelling stated it very well. We had asked, or the previous board had asked the Parks Department to find a way to be self-sustaining. And I am currently on Public Works, and when we were asked, do we need to move forward with this park? This is what we asked them to do. I think it's a good plan. It's going to take some time. There's probably going to be a few more hiccups in it. I believe that it is a good use of this land. Part of our multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan has a whole section on quarrying and how we are losing lands that we can harvest aggregate on. And if we want to continue to grow this community, this is a necessary tool for doing that. And in the process, we end up with a premier park. Yeah, it's gonna hurt for a while, but I believe they're being genuine and saying they're going to do everything that they can to mitigate problems that come up for you in the interim. When this is done, it will be a gem, and you will be glad to be living next to it. It won't be easy for a little while. Dirt is never easy to live with. But hopefully the mitigation that they do will help ease that pain for you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hartwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions. One is, when you reclaim it, I guess, Jamie, or maybe I'd ask you this question. The sidewalls, there won't be a big hole there. My fear is for some little kid to come along and fall over the edge. And so is it going to be gradual? Is that how it's going to be done?
Are you talking about underwater or above the water?
Above.
Above the water, yeah. So this isn't like a limestone or dolomite quarry where you have, the straight-faced rock edges. This is sand and gravel, so they don't put topsoil on anything 3-to-1 or steeper, really, because it's just not safe to be having big machines on that. So that's kind of a limitation for that, and that's also a requirement in state statute NR 135.
Okay. The other one is, I was just, all the funding that would come from this, I mean, from the material, that's all going to go back into the parks and serve other parks and?
That's what we're recommending. Obviously, those fiscal decisions are up to you guys, so.
Okay, and then I want to address another thing is, I know there was I received some emails about the dust problem, but I've been to a lot of quarries, and most of these operators are pretty good about what they do. I mean, if it's dry or what, they're out there with water trucks. And from my understanding, there's no blasting going on here, so we shouldn't have dust from that. So I think the dust problem shouldn't be a real issue, correct?
I think when the conditions and the wind are right, it will be on occasion. I think the way we have it set up too, as far as everything being sunken into a hole and having, woods around it, puts us in a more unique position to mitigate that even more than having basically going into a farm field where you've got direct wind coming on for, a few hundred yards.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I added because I listen to other people.
You said 3 questions.
But you made me wait. You cited Foxborough Park. They generate $45,000, you said, of revenue. Is that revenue or profit?
That's revenue. I don't have their profit numbers.
So we don't know what their operating expenses are? Could be more than 45,000?
We don't have profit in government.
The last figure I got from Waukesha County was they recoup roughly 50% of their expenses
That's also
in
Waukesha
totality.
County.
Okay. Currently, the park does have, like you cited, unrestored old mining operations there. So I'm not going to ask you to guess at what it would cost, but it's one thing for us to consider that if we don't do a project like this to be a good steward of the land, we should be restoring that, even if it has taken us 50 years at this point. We should look at properly fixing that. The 7 to 15 year projection of the project, that's of moving dirt time. That's not the planning stages in the beginning, correct?
Well, the master planning process would start within a year to 2 years, so that would be finished up. And likely the reclamation plan would be amended to account for any changes by that. We're not talking about major changes, but as far as if you were to do any benching for trails or anything like that, low cost things for the operators to do.
No, there's someone else. Lastly, if a vote today, probably a question for Josh more than anyone, if this is approved today, what other votes does the county board get on this project? I ask this for lots of different projects. I want to know if once we vote today, we're washing our hands of it, or?
Yes, so you are approving the project. You will have a vote to amend the county's zoning. So in theory, if you vote down the zoning change, that would be another.
Kill the project.
It would kill it. It wouldn't make us probably very happy if we have operators in the works, but it is an option. And then there's votes related to the park master plan, which I think you just asked for, as well as any budgetary expenses that we have.
Would we have to approve the agreement with with an operator and or the terms of that agreement?
No.
Or is that up to purchasing?
It would be staff.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, might I? Just to be clear, the resolution states that the master plan will go back to the committee. And I know Supervisor Krebs and I have had many back and forths at many county board meetings about whether such things should come to the county board as a whole or to committee. We recommend it comes back to the committee.
Seeing no more discussion, we'll vote on this electronically. It's a majority vote. Motion passes. Moving on to resolution 2018 resolution 42, transfer from the general fund, state community development block grant revolving loan fund, and authorized participation in the state's CDBG closeout program. I'll entertain a motion. Supervisor Schleif, Supervisor Smisek. Oops. Okay, any discussion?
42.
Supervisor Merton has a question.
Supervisor Martin.
I have a question relative to what does and how does this benefit Washington County?
Well, hopefully I can answer that in the presentation. And if I don't, please call me on it. First in 3 minutes. I hope everybody read the presentation. I know it was in your packet. I'll try to be brief. The reason we're coming to you with this is we don't have a choice but to come to you with this. You have to make a decision. You can either take our recommendation of transitioning through the CDBG close program the way we suggest, or the alternative as is spelled out basically manages it through the state of Wisconsin, in my opinion, through a much messier process. Essentially, the history of this is spelled out. I won't go through it in a great amount of detail, other than to say this is a federal program administered through the state of Wisconsin to the county, which we delegate to EDWC, and Christian Chechlak from EDWC is here with us if you have specific questions relative to the administration of the program. Similar to our revolving loan fund program, the dollars are the county's. The administrator of those dollars is EDWC. So it's similar in that regard. All of this has only to do with the CDBG funds. They are entirely separate from the impact revolving loan fund, which you approved consolidation and the double down on several months ago. These are two separate questions as of today. Essentially what has happened is that by virtue, this is a national program that the feds administer, or the feds have administered at the local level. In essence, what's happened is on a local level, there's been varying degrees of administration. You may not be surprised to know that there are some local governments that don't do a great job of administering federal dollars. It's probably a shock, but we're not one of those. We feel we have done a great job, and this is long before me, of maintaining the fidelity and integrity of this revolving loan fund, and which puts us in a unique and interesting situation. What we're talking about today is the revolving loan fund balance of about just over $1 million, approximately $930,000 of which is out, meaning we've loaned it. There's a business somewhere that has benefited from this loan, and those dollars are receivable to us. There's a balance of about $126,000 cash on hand, meaning all of the dollars for us, for our revolving loan fund, are accounted for. Going back to my point about the fidelity and integrity of our program is good. There are a lot of other municipalities who don't have a track record like that, which is why HUD wants to basically shut this program down and close it out with the term that they're using. So basically what we're suggesting you do, we're able to capitalize on the shortcomings of some others. Ultimately, if we follow the recommendation that we're giving you, we're able to, in the long term, keep the $1 million, this $930 in receivable, $126,000 cash on hand, by virtue of sending the money back to the Department of Administration, which essentially cleans the slate, and then we can apply for that money back, which is we are the only ones eligible for via a grant. I won't get into the specifics of what we think about that process. I will just tell you that that is the process approved by the Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level, and recommended by the State Department of Administration, who is the state agency that manages this. Basically, what I want to show you on this slide is the mechanics of what we're talking about. What this triangle diagram shows you is how the county's funds work. We have essentially, for the purposes of this discussion, 4 areas where we have money at any one time. One is our checking account, the operating account as we refer to it. There's constantly money moving in and out of the checking account, probably just like your home or your business. We also have unassigned funds, which you hear me refer to quite frequently as a savings account. These are static dollars for the most part. Many of them are invested in long, moderate term investments, moderate being 1 to 5 years. Then we also have assigned or segregated funds. These are also investments, but they're for a specific reason. Typically, they're restricted for that reason. And then we have economic development funds. These funds are also held by the county, but by virtue of agreements that we have with EDWC are managed with and through EDWC. The only thing we're talking about tonight is economic development funds. They have the entire impact of what we're talking about is predicated on the economic development fund. more specifically, when you take a look into the Economic Development Fund, here's what you saw prior to 2019. So this is before the double down that you approved. We had two revolving loan funds that were county dollars. The Impact RLF, about 4.25 million. The Attraction RLF, about 4.25 million. And then we had the federal dollars, which is the CDBG RLF, approximately $1 million. As of April of 2019, when it's fully funded with 2019 dollars, with your double down, we've rearranged the agreement with EDWC. We have consolidated the Attraction and Impact into one revolving loan fund that is county dollars only, and that's currently $11.5 million. And as of today, the CDBG federal dollars are still on their own. So there's one agreement with EDWC to manage the $11.5 million RLF, and the CDBG money is a whole separate thing from that. The current plan, as it is at this moment, is to continue to keep those separate. They're all part of that triangle, as you can see on the bottom left. We're taking a look inside economic development funds. They're all part of the whole thing, but your double down grows the Washington County RLF by 2021 or 2022 to 18.5 million. CDBG was planned to still have $1 million, so EDWC would always be managing, the plan was, they'd always be managing approximately $19.5 million. What we're recommending to you today is basically to help us keep that $19.5 million corpus as is for EDWC to manage. Our entire agreement with them is predicated on them having that level of revenue. Remember, every loan that goes out, they get fees from. That's what helps them operate. For us to be able to say, we're not going to give you any more operational levy or sales tax, we needed to have this mechanism in place. So this recommendation that we're recommending today is consistent with that. So there's two options, and I'm going to read through this because they are complicated. First is that we buy out the loan balance. That $1 million of federal money that I've been referring to, we're recommending that we buy that out. We send a check to the Department of Administration, which clears the books and makes it basically takes it off of the CDBG revolving loan program. At that point, we would then apply for a grant. We'd have to determine a project, which will need to come back to the executive committee and ultimately this board. But once we identify a project or projects that are eligible for this money, we would come back to you, get those projects approved, and go back and apply for the $1 million back. So it's a money out and a money back in. My proposal would be that we pick projects that are currently on our capital improvement list or at least on our radar for the next few years. Not that we create an entirely new project, but that we use it for projects we already planned for. There's a number of pros for this. The county basically washes our hands of the federal red tape. It gets us out of the business of federal administration or administration of the federal dollars as fast as possible. EDWC stays whole with the agreement for the double down that we just explained. All ROF funds then are defederalized, allowing for greater flexibility. So why is this important? Currently, when we administer a CDBG loan, they've got to follow all kinds of requirements with the federal government, Department of Housing and Urban Development. In this case, they would follow the rules you've established through EDWC and the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, which by our agreement, we're able to look at whenever we want. So it gives us more local control. The county can also reallocate the buyout money for existing projects. So as I said, these are the CIP projects that I would suggest we do. The con of this proposal, there is certainly a downside. The downside is we have to divert an existing $1 million of county money. So when you go back to the triangle, the bigger triangle, we would have to take monies from our unassigned fund, send it to the Department of Administration, wait until we have the projects picked and approved before we get it back. So there would be, the risk is the state or the feds suddenly change their mind and all of a sudden we're out $1 million. However, as I will explain in a moment, I think the risk on the other hand is even worse. So option B, which we are not recommending, is that we retain all of the outstanding loans that are currently there, the $900,000+ that I talked about a moment ago. And as we get those payments, we send those payments back to the Department of Administration until all payments have been paid off in full. The risk of doing this is we essentially are taking on the risk of all of those loans right now. And the DOA is not going to bail us out if one of those businesses went bad on a loan. We take that risk on. We will still have to send whatever that dollar amount is. Say, for example, one of the businesses has a $150,000 loan balance. If they default on it, that $150,000 must be paid back to the Department of Administration. We are ultimately responsible. So that's the risk on the county side. We still ultimately wash our hands of the federalization, but in this case, we wash our hands of the funds altogether. And that happens as the loans close out. The cons, as I demonstrated, we permanently lose that $1 million. Currently, we're allowed to basically play with the bank's money, or in this case, the Fed's money. In this scenario, you'd be giving that back altogether, and you don't get to utilize it for anything down the road. I don't want to repeat myself, so let me just make sure. In addition, because of the nature of the $19.5 million and the double down that we talked about before, if we go with option B, this creates a circumstance where we need to go back and renegotiate the agreement for the double down that we just made, because the revenues that EDWC will generate will have just changed because they won't be able to borrow those dollars out. Okay, so built into this assumption is that we want EDWC to retain the full $19.5 million portfolio to ensure their long-term sustainability and ultimately their fiscal independence from Washington County for their operation. Let me be clear. With the green triangle, in every scenario, the green triangle are county dollars. Even in 2021, those dollars do not belong to EDWC. The interest that comes off of those dollars is what EDWC will get to make their operation go, so that we don't have to write a check every single year, no matter what we do. But the dollars belong to the county. So that doesn't change in any of the scenarios I'm talking about. I just want to make sure that that's clear. So basically what this is, for those of you who are visual learners, you're welcome, Supervisor Kelly. What we're suggesting is the blue arrows. I know they're hard to see on this slide. What we're suggesting is the blue arrows, that we're going to take money from the unassigned fund, approximately $1 million. We're going to send it to the Department of Administration following the bottom blue arrow. We're then going to apply back for that money from the Department of Administration for an eligible project under the Community Development Block Program, not the revolving loan fund program that they have, but a multitude of others. It's designated for us only, and we'll get that money back for an existing project to be approved by Executive Committee and the County Board at a later date. That's our recommendation. Option B would be we slowly, over the course of the life of the loans, we slowly give the money back to the Department of Administration and take the risk that if somebody defaults, that we have to pay extra over to the Department of Administration. Ultimately, the proposed plan, as I just explained, allows EDWC and our Economic Development Fund to stay at $19.5 million. It keeps the operation of EDWC whole by 2021, and we stay consistent with what we've told you from the beginning. So just to give you an idea of some proposed projects, not that these are the projects we're going to do, but these are some things that we are thinking about, so you have something to consider. The future of Samaritan, there are likely over $1 million worth of projects at the Samaritan Building. Executive Committee, as part of my evaluation, and as part of the first step in the process of strategic priority setting, identified this as their highest priority, which will be recommended to the board as you go through strategic priorities. This was one area where there's a lot of expense. The PAC facility across the street, they have a number of physical plant CIP projects that may qualify for grant dollars such as these. The University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee at Washington County, they have a number of physical plant CIP projects which may or may not qualify. The bike and pedestrian plan may or may not qualify in terms of implementing it. That's probably lower on the list of what we would recommend. And the old courthouse rehabilitation projects, there's likely well over $1 million in projects at that facility, which we believe may qualify. My recommendation is going to be that we hire a contract engineering firm to help us identify these projects. Most of these projects we would hire a firm for in some capacity anyway, whether it's truly an engineering firm or someone else, to make sure that we cross every T and dot every I to get these dollars back, which is the big risk. If there is a risk, that's the big risk. We want a professional to help us through that. We have staff that could help us as well if you choose not to contract with somebody. In any event, I feel like given the two options that we've been given by the Department of Administration and HUD, the one we're recommending is the best with the least amount of risk long-term for the county. So what we're proposing is a motion to recommend, motion to approve the resolution that's in front of you, which would direct myself to work with these consultants, as I talked about, identify appropriate and eligible projects, which we'll bring back to the committee and ultimately the county board for future use as part of this program. So hopefully that explained it in quickly enough, but thoroughly enough as well. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
We have one. We have one. Yeah. It was a while ago. Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the grant, it's shooting fish in a barrel where we're the only ones that are allowed to apply for the grant.
Correct. It's
like
non-competitive.
It's like a wink, wink, nod, nod. Kind of. Okay. Seems too good to be true with the government for me, but okay. One question, the hiring a consultant to help with figuring out what projects can be used towards that, can that money be paid for by the grant too, part of that?
Probably not, but we're also probably not talking about a great deal of money. We're talking in the thousands, not in this case, million.
Okay.
I'm more concerned about identifying the project, not necessarily designing it.
Can you just slightly touch on the scope of what, you outlined some projects there, but what really is the government looking at when they're talking about what projects?
That's a great question. So CDBG is a very specific program, and I might ask Christian to help me out with this a little bit. But generally speaking, they're aimed at programs that impact low-income populations, make improvements to facilities that have a high degree of impact on low income. Is that a fair, very small nutshell summarization?
National objective is low to moderate income and slum and blight elimination.
So the answer was the national objective is low income and blight elimination. Low income and blight elimination. So in this case, places like Samaritan are right in line with that type of thing. The PAC, we believe, is right in line with that type of thing. The old courthouse likely falls under a blight category. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you have to get a designation from the local community to say it's a blighted property. And once the blight is addressed, it's handed off, in this case, to the Historical Society, which just happens to be part of the discussion with the ad hoc committee. So I don't want to say that any of those with 100% certainty work, but all of those are the types of things we believe may be eligible.
Would the university campus, was that because college kids are poor?
That's our basic thought process, yes.
Okay.
And typically the campus, the purpose of the campus is for folks who generally can't afford another higher university. So that's our thought process, yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Executive Director Cheshuk of the EDWC had made two very thorough presentations over time to the administrative committee, through which I sat, so thank you very much for that. And so now I get to see your abbreviated version. I just wanted to make sure that everybody here knew that when looked at by the the administrative committee, for the members attending, it was unanimously moved forward to this body for consideration. So I would encourage you to vote for it. The Plan A, which is what Administrator Showman has showed us as the best option. Thank you.
Supervisor Bullowa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of the proposed amendment. My question is, are the dollars matched one for one, or is there a possibility of gaining more money from the state?
So if we send $1 million, to use a round number, to the Department of Administration, we can apply for $1 million back from the Department of Administration. Does that answer your question?
So it is the one for one type thing? And
I think, if I'm understanding, a one for one is, as you are explaining it, yes, it's a one
Right,
for
so
one.
no more than 1 million coming back to
Yes,
the county?
correct. You are
Okay,
correct.
Got it.
It's essentially a segregated fund that they create just for Washington County.
Supervisor Merton.
Are we the only ones in the closeout program?
No, every municipality, every county in the state that has a revolving loan fund of this type is in the program. Every municipality and every county in the country is going through a process. Illinois' process is slightly different than Wisconsin's, is my understanding. Substantially similar, but slightly different. Is that fair?
Yes.
So this is a nationwide attempt for, essentially, in my opinion, this is a nationwide attempt to clean the books on the RLF funds because they aren't very well managed.
So we talk about hiring an expert to help
Yes.
us decide what projects to use.
Yes.
So isn't Christian eligible for that, to do that for us?
No. So we are also involved in other CDBG programs. So CDBG is a big umbrella of programs. It's not just a revolving loan fund. Revolving loan fund is one. We're also in another one. You may be familiar with the Southern Housing Region. We have membership on that board. That is managed by MSA Professional Services, who is one of the organizations I've recommended. They are more suited to identify the types of projects. Christian's organization was more suited specifically for administration of the RLF type of a project under CDBG. So we're looking for somebody more suited for the other types of programs under the CDBG program.
Yes, our expertise is limited to the economic development component, but this opens the door to that broader umbrella for you through that grant, which we
Thank
don't
you.
have that expertise.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schleif.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we discussed this in executive, I believe there was a component that there was a 2-year window that we had to work to get that money back from the state. Is that correct?
I'll defer to Christian on that.
Yes, there is a 2-year period upon which you make application. Once the application is submitted, you have additional time to actually execute on the grant. So it's not like 2 years and then hands washed.
So we don't have any concern with getting it done?
Within 2 years, that's plenty of time to make application to the program.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more discussion, we'll vote on this electronically. Vote, Pete. Motion passes. Moving on to 2018 Resolution 70, commendation of Dale K. Schmidt. You got that one, Ashley? Oh, yeah, sorry. Need a motion? Supervisor Merton, Supervisor Goddard. Okay, read it, please.
Whereas Dale K. Schmidt has contributed more than 29 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Dale K. Schmidt has chosen to retire from his present position of Washington County Sheriff, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Dale K. Schmidt for his 29 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Dale K. Schmidt as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Okay, as ex-Sheriff Schmidt was unable to attend tonight, we'll stand with the applause. Okay, 2018 Resolution 72, authorize additional funding for Family Park Golf Course Deck Expansion Project. They have a motion, consider. Supervisor Dice. Supervisor Hartwig.
If you have questions, we'll answer them, but I know it's 9:30, so.
Supervisor Krebs.
Yep, just a couple. My couple is 3. Does the golf course, it references the golf course getting a liquor license? What is?
The liquor
How does that
license
tie in with this?
originally was a condition of some of the, I'll just call them grant dollars or donations that we got from folks that are funding the deck. And so the two have been married together. And I would suggest are still married together. So
So
that
we-
this isn't fully funded just by the golf course operation. It's
we're-
also donated in part.
We're dependent on our liquor license to help fund the deck.
We are partially dependent on gift or donation dollars from individuals to fund the deck. Their condition of those dollars was that we pursue a liquor license.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yep.
Okay.
We're switching to a concrete patio instead of a deck for a portion of it, but it referenced deep footings. Is there soil issues out there, or what's the situation?
The side of the hill, if you're on the south side of this building, essentially underneath the building is where there's storage, primarily for the carts. So if you stand on that side as if you're gonna drive a cart into there, it's a pretty quick drop off on the hillside. So there are some issues there. That's in part what requires the footing. If you look at it currently, if you look at photos of it, it's starting to collapse. Where we currently have asphalt, it's starting to come down. And
Okay.
that's part of the issue.
Okay. Lastly, this is a larger deck than what we discussed in the past. Besides is there plans for like larger events to be rented on this then, like weddings and stuff, or is this still just for the daily operations of the park?
The
Or of
primary
course?
motivator is daily operations to drive more people to the course, but it opens the possibility for other larger events.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, see no more questions. We'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes. 2018 Resolution 73, authorization to terminate a portion of the Cedar Lake Wayside easement. We have a motion. Mr. Smasek. Mr. Schliff, I kind of messed it up. Schliff. Okay, any discussion? Supervisor Martin?
Why do we say portion only? Are we not vacating all of the area?
We are not.
We are not?
We
What
are
is
not.
happening with the rest?
We retain a portion of it as easement because of the two county highways meet right there. Excuse me? Right away, I'm sorry, yes, right of way.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Krebs?
So the part that we're gonna vacate or release the easement to, that's privately owned by someone to be determined. Is that property gonna be put on the tax roll and delinquent on taxes if no one is found to own it?
That's my understanding. I work, I know this was quite a research project, but I worked with Brian Braithwaite in the real property lister's office, and his expectation is that if we terminate our use of this particular easement, it goes on the tax rolls. Ownership of this particular piece of property is unknown. Assuming nobody steps forward to pay the taxes on it, eventually it could be taken by tax deed by the county and sold off.
So would any of the back taxes be owed then, or is the county just gonna forget about them?
We'll use the same process as we do for any property. Once we get to 6-year,
About 5 years.
5-year mark, we go through the auction process and we'd set the threshold at administrative committee and,
I'm talking about the taxes that haven't been paid for the last 30 years or whatever.
it was, no,
It was still privately owned at that time.
no.
It was privately owned, but with an easement on it.
Correct. Well, we don't own it,
We'll be
but
selling it for taxes in the future.
there you go.
I won't torture everyone.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our trail development meeting earlier today, something was alluded to about using the Wayside Park as a trailhead, and that was totally new to me, and we had talked about getting rid of this, so.
Yeah. So my response to this was, because we were asked, should we recommend voting this down because someday in the future, it's possible that we one day might, in the event that we build a trail, possibly put a trailhead. My response was, we'll acquire the land 20 years from now when we do that. That's a great question, though.
Supervisor Carr?
It's my recollection that this was for sale for some period of time by the county as a park that they wanted to, that we, I should say, wanted to abandon. Isn't that correct?
That was our initial approach was that we were gonna sell it, yes. We never did list it because we found out we couldn't.
And so how long have we known that we don't own it?
We've known for probably 6 months. It took all of that time to figure out what in the heck was going on with this property, as described by the county attorney.
But the county spent money developing this little piece of property into a park. There's a well there, there's some wayside stuff there. I mean, it's just a point of curiosity to me that the county felt that they owned it and they somehow all of a sudden realized we don't. I mean, is there some story there?
Well, it's right of way and easement. Do we own any easement or any right of way? That's part of the confusion and part of why this is not going to take your vote today. It's going to take another 5 years and another vote sometime in the future. It is very curious.
I should say, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I will vote on this electronically. Supervisor Harwick? Motion passes. 2018 Resolution 74, advisory resolution in support of updating statutory provisions for bidding requirements. The county's ability to utilize design-build construction method and public-private partnerships. Take it, are you on that, gonna be, you need a motion, Supervisor Bossert, Supervisor Sorcy.
Same, no explanation unless you have questions.
Seeing no questions, we'll vote on this electronically. You ready? Okay. Motion passes. 2018 Ordinance 16, Washington County Staffing Plan, Sheriff's Office, and Washington County Classification and Compensation Plan. In motion, Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Krebs. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes. Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Only because of the fact that this was brought up by three different supervisors, Supervisor Bassett, Supervisor Boston, Supervisor Berg, as regards to comments of Supervisor Bishop. I would ask that if she has any information as regards to any hijinks or whatever term she used, that it be brought up to the county attorney. And if this was just an off-the-cuff comment, that I ask that you would seriously consider apologizing to this body for any type of an accusation made that something was done inappropriately by any member of this body. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, I would like to strongly suggest that all supervisors consider attending the executive committee meeting on February 19th. We will, at that meeting, we will be determining if we should engage an executive coaching professional to work with the board, and we'll be interviewing 2 potential candidates that would conduct those coaching sessions. As we will be facing a number of important decisions in the near future, it is imperative that we work as a team to further the strategic goals that we have put in place to benefit the citizens of Washington County. I want your input in this important decision. You'll all receive a link via email to the candidates' resumes and proposals. So take the time to read and formulate questions for the candidates. And if you are able, please plan to attend to ask those questions. Next meeting date, Wednesday, March 13th, 2019, 6 o'clock p.m., and we are hereby adjourned.